The WWF, what the world is watching. Turn it on and rip the knob off.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Wrestling Memory Grenade, now at episode 161, and we are ready to have some fun. I am your host, Ray Russell, and this is the definitive edition of the Survivor Series 1988 review, the second annual now, 2 in a row, so you can call them an annual now. Yeah, absolutely. And as promised, guys, this week we have a very special guest going to be returning for the first time since our WrestleMania 4 show. As we get ready, Survivor Series 88, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the show, my very own brother. Welcome back, Jesse.
Hey, brother. Thanks for having me, man. Been a while. Looking forward to this.
Oh, brother, very much looking forward to this. This has to be top 5 video rental of all time in my youth, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I would say, too. Yeah, man, I've been looking forward to this since last year's Survivor Series, and I think you know why.
Oh, absolutely. We got the giant
the tag match.
That's
Spoiler,
it.
Everyone.
Well, they're all tag matches, but I know what you mean. The 20-man, 10-team tag team match O'Doom is upcoming here. Can't wait to get to that. It had a special place in both of our hearts growing up. But again, I go back to the video rental days, and this was easily, well, along with a couple other Survivor Series and a couple of the Royal Rumbles, it was like a must rental every other week, I feel like, back in the day.
Yeah, well, you know, when we were playing our G.I. Joe Survivor Series and Royal Rumbles and whatnot, I definitely took a lot from this match on how to, you know, how those should look. And, you know, I love doing like the 20-man Survivor Series for sure, man.
Yeah, studying that shit way back when we were just kids. Everybody else was just playing around, didn't give a shit, and we took it too serious, I guess. But that's okay, because now we're here to do it like this on a podcast. Did you ever think way back? Well, we were doing this on tape recorder, I guess, right? Back in 1989, 90, 91-ish. So I guess we kind of did envision this.
Yeah. We didn't even know what the hell a podcast was back in those days, but we did do the recordings, and we had shows that were non-wrestling related. You know, I'm sure you remember some of those comedic bits with my dog, Sammy, and you know, certain things that were said that we're not going to repeat now, but
no, we'd be canceled. But I tell you what, we're like Rick Martel's 1990 Survivor Series team. We were visionaries. Haha, yes. And now, guys, we kick it off, the WWF Survivor Series, November 24th, 1988, and we are live from the Richfield Coliseum, just a half an hour's drive from me right now, Richfield, Ohio. And your announcers, Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse the Body Ventura. I do not recall ever going to the Richfield with you. Did you ever attend anything at the Richfield Coliseum, Jesse?
I think I went to like an old Cavs game, but no, I never went to any sort of wrestling events, probably until mid to late 90s. So, yeah, I was never there back when it was in our hometown, sort of our hometown.
Yeah, so no fancy Dan intro here. In fact, no intro at all this year on Survivor Series. Just we see, well, basically the Survivor Series logo appear on the screen as we fade into the arena, high atop the Richfield Coliseum. And I myself have been there many a times to watch wrestling shows. In fact, my favorite match of all time, and you can call me biased, but I actually got to see Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon from the third row on the floor practice their ladder match for WrestleMania 10. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say it was even better than WrestleMania 10 because they did the same exact bit, but they had extra spots as well. I guess they were trying to figure out which ones they wanted to work into the pay-per-view. But yeah, so it was great times back then, going to the Richfield in the 80s into 1994, that would have been. And then they closed it down and built the Gund Arena, the Quicken Loans Arena. I think it's changed names a couple of times since then.
Yeah, and I couldn't even tell you what it's called right now, but I don't even think it's Quicken Loans anymore.
No, the Rock, I think they call it. Rocket Mortgage Field. I think
I still call it Gund Arena, man. Yeah, same thing with Jacobs Field.
Yeah. Progressive Field, Jacobs
and
Field.
And the Indians.
They're still the Indians.
And everything I grew up with.
Absolutely.
It's still all that. I'm stuck in time.
But, you know, the old Richfield Coliseum, just a great visual, larger than the average basketball arena at the time. It could hold well over 20,000 for the NBA. So you tack on some floor seats for a WWF event, and that could make quite a large crowd. But the Coliseum, unique in that they had cheap seats, and then they had really cheap seats, some nosebleeds way up there, almost with the people in the old skybox type deals. And those would typically be closed off, those super cheap seats on a big event like this. So where you might think there were 20,000 fans there, and it looks huge when you see that video, the visual when it comes in atop the Richfield Coliseum. But really, according to the internet anyway, we have 13,500 fans out here Thanksgiving night near Cleveland, Ohio, to witness the new Thanksgiving tradition. And it is a tradition now, guys, because we've had two in a row, 2 Thanksgivings in a row. Like you said, you were here for Survivor Series 87. Good to have you back for Survivor Series 88.
Yeah, and again, man, I've been looking forward to this. I appreciate the invite, and you might hit on it, dude. But did you hear Jesse Ventura totally changed his tune from last year to this year about his talk about our hometown?
Oh yeah, I got it in my notes here. We'll be getting to that in just a moment. So Gorilla Monsoon, Jesse Ventura, and I love Gorilla and Bobby. There was no one better to entertain you on Wrestling Challenge on Primetime Wrestling. But when it was time to get serious, and I'm not saying Gorilla and Bobby didn't have some good calls in the early 90s on pay-per-view, but it felt like the right team. Gorilla and Jesse Ventura here. It was just always right in the world when these two were on the screen. You knew you were about to watch a happening, to quote the Gorilla. And so Gorilla has his Jesse, and now I have my Jesse here for our version of Survivor Series 88, as they immediately go from the opening logo straight to Gorilla and Jesse the Pilgrim Ventura here, rocking the old pilgrim hat. The body feeling festive, as he says, you pointed it out, there's no place he'd rather be on Turkey Day than here in scenic Cleveland. And I wrote in my notes, which is a 180 from his comments made last year about the city, but I guess we'll forgive him.
Yeah, I guess we'll let it slide.
I'll let Dick slide this time. An old Simon Diamond joke there, EC Dub. But yeah, so it's so funny if you go back and listen to Survivor Series 87, how much Jesse trashes, I can't wait to get out of Cleveland. And this year, it's beautiful, scenic Cleveland. And he's going to mention it again later in the show as well. Put it over one more, something stinks, but it sure ain't Cleveland. So I feel like when he came back, there was some narrative like, hey, Jesse, you can't be burying the city that we're running the show in.
No doubt. Yeah, good call. So you were mentioning, Gorilla and Bobby. Yes, awesome tandem, dude. But for some reason, man, not that I only watch wrestling late at night when I'm ready to fall asleep, but there's just something soothing. And I know it's counterintuitive with, Jesse the Body's voice and all that, but there's just something about listening to Gorilla and Jesse when I'm just wanting to relax and fall asleep. And just, I guess, familiar voices is probably what it is. But yeah, I totally agree with that, man. They were an awesome duo.
Yeah, Gorilla's on my top of my list of just those soothing voices to put you to sleep. And that's not even a negative. It's a comforting thing, really, to go back and all those years of that. But so quick intro to the pay-per-view. We hear the Warriors music begin to play, and we go off straight to the ring for our opening match at the Survivor Series. WWF not screwing around, starting things off right this year. Last year, it was like a 10-minute long drawn-out thing where they kind of broke down the rules of the Survivor Series and just a lot of banter that felt unnecessary. But this time, 35 seconds, I counted it, 35 seconds into the pay-per-view, and the Warriors music begins blasting over the PA system. The fans coming alive in Richfield, very loud crowd, as we go to the ring for the opening intros. So away we go. It's going to be a happening for sure, says the Gorilla here. So what did you think? You pop in the video, or I'm dating myself popping in a video. You turn on the network, the Peacock or whatever, you press play, and almost immediately Warriors music begins to play. They're not fooling around. They want to get right to the action. And they picked the perfect guy to come to the ring, right?
Yeah, man. It was awesome. You want to get a huge pop and get the crowd on their feet right away, then cue the Warriors music, man. And I'm a well-documented Warriors fan. There's no doubt about it. I was in love with the guy. He was my guy back then.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 100% mine as well. I had the T-shirts, and I was a big Warrior fan. Probably, I don't want to say the biggest, but certainly he was my favorite through a certain period of time anyway. So here he comes out to the ring with his team. Kick back, guys. Enjoy the turkey, the stuffing, and Gorilla's favorite, the peanut butter pie, as we begin to look here at Survivor Series 88, the opening match. Co-captains, the Ultimate Warrior, the current Intercontinental Champion, and Brutus the Barber Beefcake, teaming up with the Blue Blazers, Sam Houston and Jumping Jim Brunzell. We'll get to that team in just a moment. Their opponents, co-captains, the Honky Tonk Man and Outlaw Ron Bass. They're going to be teaming up with Greg the Hammer Valentine, Bad News Brown, and Dangerous Danny Davis. Manager in their corner, Jimmy Hart. as we look across the ring. A lot of crossover in history here, especially for Brutus Beefcake. His former partner in the Dream Team, Greg Valentine. Danny Davis, one of the many victims of a beefer haircut. Of course, the near 8-month feud between the Barber and Honky Tonk that was actually never settled, all because of, yes, the Outlaw, Ron Bass, taking Brutus out of SummerSlam after that heinous attack with the Maverick brothers, those Spurs, bloodying the Barber, leading Beefcake to seek all sorts of revenge here tonight. And then Bad News Brown he's just there.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, it just kind of looks like a hodgepodge of, mix and match, but they did actually a pretty good job of tying in, different storylines with the guys on each side. Bad News Brown, yeah, well, he's a loner.
we had to figure out a way to slide him into the pay-per-view because he's one of the top talent. He's about to go after the Macho Man's WWF title, so you can't leave Bad News off the show, but I can see why they wanted to keep him out of that main event match and kind of save that for later. So we've got Beefcake in there against at least 4 guys who have a bone to pick with him. Meanwhile, the Ultimate Warrior, he slid into Beefcake's SummerSlam spot as a last-minute replacement for the Barber and takes the title from the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, beating the Honky Tonk Man in a record time at MSG. And since that time, Honky been chasing the Warrior, trying to reclaim what he feels is rightfully his. So we'll see how things go here for Team Honky Tonk tonight. And of course, we shan't forget the never-ending matches that I had to digest throughout the early part of 1988 between Danny Davis and Sam Houston. In fact, I think they wrestled for the better part of 8 months on the house shows or whatever that was. So unfortunately, these guys are part of this match. But like I said, Bad News Brown, you pointed it out, a loner. We never see him in a tag team situation. He's never needed a manager to steal his money. He's been working his way into a feud with the WWF champ Randy Savage as of late. It's going to be interesting to see how he interacts with his partners here tonight, wouldn't you say? Yeah, interesting indeed. Let's find out. Yeah, the loner. And for those keeping score, the Rock Don Morocco was originally now announced for Team Warrior here due to his ongoing feud with Greg Valentine. But Morocco fired from the company in October for insubordination on a European tour, put his hands on agent Nick Bockwinkel. Can't do that, Don. And so Morocco fired, and he was replaced here by Killer B, Jumpin' Jim Brunzell, filling the spot. And contrary to many narratives out there online, this was announced weeks in advance on television that Jim Brunzell, they didn't say Morocco was gone, they just simply said Jim Brunzell was now on the team. So there's that. And that kind of explains why Warrior has a ho-hum, lackluster undercard or underneath team here with the Beefer. Yeah, I mean, it's really just about the Warrior and his time to shine. But, Brutus was pretty popular around this time as well. And just trying to think on the other side, Honky Tonk, self-proclaimed greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. So, I mean, got a little bit of star power, and the up-and-coming Bad News Brown, I mean, we can't forget that guy. No, definitely not. And Beefcake has the story with the Outlaw Ron Bass going, whether it's, great matches or not, that's debated. But at least there's some storyline there, some purpose there for Ron Bass to be in the situation he's in. And it's already noted, the Warriors team out first, his music blaring, the quintet rushing to the ring, all fired up, ready to go, creating that electricity so thick you can cut it with a knife. As Team Honky Tonk out second, Jimmy Hart managing Honky Valentine, and until recently, he was also the manager of Danny Davis. So I guess here we pretend he still does manage Danny Davis, at least for tonight. Meanwhile, the Outlaw, one of the very few pushed heels that never had a manager. Really weird. And of course, as mentioned, Bad News never needed a manager in his corner. So Outlaw Ron Bass may have been the only heel during this time frame to get pushed to his level that wasn't managed by a manager other than Bad News, but he doesn't count. Yeah. Do you remember, this is kind of sidetracking here for just a second, but do you remember my friend Terry in high school, man, that had his dad, I think his name was like the Outlaw or the Bounty Hunter, I believe. Yes, was his name. Bounty, yeah. I don't know why, man, but he always reminded me of the Outlaw Ron Bass. Oh. Anyway, that literally just popped in my head. It wasn't something that I had planned to discuss, but I just had to bring that up. Oh, yeah, I remember. You came with me to one of the shows, remember? Yes, and I remember watching the Bounty Hunter on the local public access television and seeing him wrestle in sweat clothes. I think we cheered harder for him that match we went to than he's ever heard in his whole career, man. Yeah, he looked over. He's like, he broke character. He broke character. He's supposed to be a big, nasty heel. He broke character and looked out at us and was like laughing. He's like, oh my God, people are cheering for me. Yeah, that's good times. Yeah, but I digress. Oh yeah, that was 30 plus years ago. My God, man. Wow. Where does the time go? Well, right now, guys, we go back to 1988. A reminder, these matches have 2 referees, by the way, one inside the ring, one outside. Now, Joey Morella on the outside, inside the ring is one of the Hebners. I'm not sure which, but they're both called Dave right now. We're pretending there's only one Hebner, and so they're both Dave. Unfortunate for Earl, for a while anyway. So we get going. The bell sounds, ding, 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 and action begins less than 3 minutes into the show. We're not 3 minutes into the pay-per-view, and the bell rings for the opening matchup, and Gorilla already at a total of 3 holy mackerels, and we're just kicking things off. So for the second year in the row, I noticed Brutus Beefcake starting off the Survivor Series pay-per-view for his team. So now it makes me curious, since he's in the opening match at 89, is he going to start that one off as well? Now I got to watch and see. Meanwhile, the Barber's opponent to begin things here, the former partner, Greg the Hammer Valentine. Brudi getting the better of things early on until Valentine sends him into a knee into the back from Danny Davis as he's running the ropes. And per usual, Gorilla thinks the Hammer, he needs some time to warm up. So in comes dangerous Danny Davis. Davis comes in landing some shots on Brudi, but Beefcake quickly reversing a whip into the ropes, and Danny runs right into the sleeper hold. You got to be kidding me. Already? Brutus has the sleeper applied. Down goes Davis. Danny is out, the first victim, eliminated at the Survivor Series, and only 1 minute and 16 seconds. I wrote, wow, that was quick. Writing on the wall for Dangerous Danny the Wrestler.
Yeah, I mean, how much longer was he around after this?
Somewhere around WrestleMania 5 before he goes back to being a referee. And, there's not a whole lot of emphasis on what happened there, just that he's been put on a probation, and if he does anything wrong from there, he's going to be fired, and we'll get to that on the grenade when we get to that era of 89. But, yeah, Danny Davis has really fallen down throughout 1988, and as of late, if anybody's been paying attention, the times, and there's very few times, but that he's been on television, no Jimmy Hart at ringside. So Danny Davis out here in 116, getting things going. Warrior out first, crowd hot for the Warriors team. And here we go. One of the heels out first, which, gives the baby faces the odds right now. There's 5-4, but no time for a breather. The Hammer back in, attacking the Barber, going straight for the leg, looking for that figure 4 leg lock. But Beefer kicking Greg off, makes the tag out to the Blue Blazer. Big pop for Owen Hart as he counters a top wrist lock with a float over flying head scissors. Nice, Owen. Next in is Jumpin' Jim Brunzell, who manages to land his patented dropkick, Jesse. One last time on Greg Valentine, but Jim didn't see the blind tag made to Bad News Brown. So we're going to continue on here in just a moment, but Jumpin' Jim, he got to land one final dropkick. He's on his way out of the company for now. He will return as enhancement talent in a couple of years' time, but what did you think of old Jumpin' Jim Brunzell?
I mean, I like the Killer Bees. So, I mean, I always had a place in my heart for them. But, yeah, as far as a singles guy, by the time I started really watching wrestling, he was pretty much already that enhancement talent that you kind of just alluded to.
Doing the job.
So I really didn't have any thoughts as far as like, oh, he's one of my top guys. He was always just like, oh, he's around. Like I had a G.I. Joe for him, if that makes any sense. So, I mean, I acknowledged him, but he was never like one of my top guys or a favorite.
Yeah, I just always waited for the dropkick, even in that job guy spot later on. It's like he had to get the dropkick in. You had to make sure he did that, and he got it here. Unfortunately, Bad News Brown already tagged in and attacks Brunzell from behind, just putting a beating on the former Killer Bee, who is now back to his old AWA high flyer tie-dye trunks here. I don't know if you noticed that. Brown laying the smackdown on Jumpin' Jim, complete with a straight boot to the face. I wrote LOL. I don't know if you caught that. It was just one move, but Bad News goes off the ropes. And Brunzell's on his knees, and I'm going, what is he going to do here? Bad News just walks up to him and just kicks him straight in the face for real. It was great stuff.
Yeah, I caught that.
At one point, we do see Greg Valentine holding Brunzell for Brown to take a cheap shot, foreshadowing some things to come later in the matchup. Brunzell going to reverse a whip into the corner, but misses a charge, and Bad News Brown capitalizes Ghetto Blaster. And it's bye-bye for Brunzell. 5 minutes and 10 seconds into the matchup. And quick trivia, guys, I kind of mentioned it already. Jim Brunzell going to work the house show the following night in Chicago. Yes, straight back to the house shows right after a pay-per-view. No days off back then for the World Wrestling Federation. But that Chicago show on the Friday night will mark Brunzell's final matchup here during this run. So Brunzell gone after the pay-per-view, essentially, and Bad News Brown getting a token victory here before he's eliminated.
Farewell, Jim. But back to Bad News, man. Wasn't he like some black belt in some martial art? I can't remember what it was.
Was he a silver medalist or a gold medalist in judo in the Olympics? I can't remember which medal he won. Maybe it might have been bronze. I can't remember. He did medal though. Yeah, he did place. So yeah, he was the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, so judo champion, even if he was runner up, man, that's still a hell of a feat. But I always liked that ghetto blaster because I know like the enziguri and things like that kind of, started being more commonplace, especially like into the 90s and things. But the way he did it was just like so unique, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And you wouldn't expect it coming. It was his one trick pony, right? It was one move for he was already up there in age by this point. By the time he got to the WWF, he really couldn't do a whole lot on the offense. There's a lot of kicking and punching. But when it came to the ghetto blaster, that was it. You believed in that move. That was a finisher, and it made you pop whether, you liked him or you hated him. That move, you wanted to see that move. And it was so fun. And when we would wrestle, and it was either you or, Jason, my cousin, or whatever the case may be, we would do all these moves on each other, but I would never try the ghetto blaster. I would just lift my foot in the air and go, ghetto blaster, and then somebody would sell it. Like, that was I'm not going to do that in the grass.
Thank you kindly. Thank you kindly, man. I probably would have suffered a little too many concussions.
A couple anyway. So Bad News Brown gets a token pinfall here as he's still in the match for the time being, but he continues the beatdown, this time on Sam Houston. Sam running into a boot in the corner, tag out to the Hammer, Greg Valentine, who also wants a piece of young Samuel. By the way, I got a note, guys, and I know you had to have seen this. Throughout the entire match, the Ultimate Warrior is not standing there waiting for a tag. He's running up and down the fucking apron, pumping his fist, screaming. I mean, this guy, I don't know how he didn't blow up before he ever got in the ring, because no days off for the Warrior here. He's just a constant bag of motion during this entire match. I just had to point that out. It was ridiculous.
He was a lunatic, man.
Yeah, we talked about, a lot on our video cast. We do the Coliseum video cast with Gene Jackson, and we do a lot of old Captain Lou where he was the manager outside, always walking in front of the fucking camera. Get the fuck out of the way, Lou. But Warrior was just a different level here. Unbelievable. So had to point that out. And I think I will again here in my notes at some point, because it just gets ridiculous in a good way, guys. So we got Bad News in the ring. We got Greg Valentine in the ring. Sam Houston getting his ass kicked is what's happening. Sam does kick out of a Bad News leg drop. Don't do my move, brother. Patented left arm clothesline though from Bad News, and eventually Brown going to hold Houston for Valentine to now take a cheap shot. But Sam ducks out of the way and Valentine nails Bad News. And that is bad news for Greg anyway. Ruh-roh, Raggy. As Bad News Brown is pissed off. The two men argue, with Brown shoving the Hammer and Greg shoving right back. So Honky Tonk and Bass, the co-captains, jump in the ring to separate the two partners, try to calm things down. But Bad News, he's had enough. The loner from Harlem exits the ring, heads to the back, never looking back. Bad News Brown is counted out. 7 minutes and 45 seconds. I don't know what a guy like Bad News was thinking to begin with, teaming with a team led by a guy named Honky, of all things. Bad News and Honky just I don't know.
Oh, good point. Yeah, good point on that one. I would have loved to have seen Bad News in there, even if just for 30 seconds, just a little confrontation with the Warrior, man.
Oh, my God. That? Yeah. Oh, man. I never thought of that until now. That would have been interesting. Let's put it there. I don't know that anybody was going to sell for anybody, but I think at the end of the day, Warrior might have been forced to sell to Bad News Brown. But that would have been fun. I'm not so sure they ever locked horns in the WWF, but I'll have to go back and look on random house shows and things. So Bad News Brown intentionally gets himself counted out, leaves his team behind, and in all seriousness, Brown, he has bigger fish to fry right now than to worry about this type of matchup. He's got the WWF champion Randy Savage moving forward. We're going to see Brown very soon, spoiler alert, on Superstars confront the president of the WWF, Jack Tunney, when things don't go his way. So be on the lookout for that right now. Bad News Brown not done by any means, but he is done here. And so with Valentine distracted by this entire situation, Sam Houston going to sneak in, drop kick the Outlaw into Honky Tonk Man, and then schoolboy the Hammer. But he only gets a 2 count. And I wrote here in my notes, boy, that would have made an awesome elimination, but it's Sam Houston, so let's be real. That simply wasn't going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. Ron Bass Ron Bass tags in for the first time in the match. Probably a good call there. Surprisingly, the spry Cowboy Houston, though, fights back on the veteran Outlaw. O'Connor roll, reverse rolling cradle here by Sam Houston, going to get 2 count, but Sam winds up running into the boot of the Outlaw in the corner. Lucky he didn't have those spurs on, Sam. Outlaw landing a snug clothesline, going to get a 2 count there. Sam busting out a reverse body block from the middle rope for his own near fall, but runs into a forearm straight between the eyes, courtesy of the Outlaw. And then that's followed up by an elbow drop to the face. I wrote, oof. I know Ron Bass liked to work snug, they'll call it here, but he literally does the elbow drop across the side of Sam's face, and I'm like, man, what did he do to piss him off?
I caught that too, man. I wouldn't want that.
That's nasty. So Houston, though, going to come fighting back again, going to try another monkey flip out of the corner. But Bass, just too big, too strong, literally turns the monkey flip straight into the Texas Stampede, the old power slam, eliminating Sam Houston 10 minutes, 10 seconds, and we are back to 3-on-3. But maybe not for long, because in comes the walking ball of energy himself. The Ultimate Warrior has seen enough and attacks anything that moves, taking care of all 3 heels at the same time. Carelessly, I might add. Just picking up and flinging poor Honky Tonk across the ring. Delivering an awesome flying shoulder tackle, though, launching Honky backwards. Really good bump there by Honky Tonk. Then the Warrior makes the tag out to the Blue Blazer, who goes up top. Warrior rocket launching the Blazer onto Ron Bass with a big splash. Going to get a near fall there for the Blazer. Honky tagging in, but runs into a Blazer crossbody for 2. From there, Owen Hart with a nice monkey flip and a running dropkick. And then in comes Greg Valentine, who was clearly the workhorse of the match because he's in more than not. I mean, he's got the Outlaw and Honky Tonk for partners. Can't say the co-captains weren't smart anyway. Greg going to move to that normal hammer pace here, a little slower than most people, and thus maybe a little slow in getting under a Blue Blazer leapfrog. And that winds up inadvertently headbutting Owen right in the groin. Ugh, for real, by the way, guys. And that wasn't any ordinary botch. We'll get back to that in a moment. What did you make of the Blue Blazer here in this showing? What did you make of the Warrior coming in here just manhandling poor Honky Tonk, man?
I mean, that was a great bump by Honky. I'll give him that, man. As far as Blue Blazer, though, dude, like, I didn't know back then, that was Bret Hart's brother. Obviously, later on, he'll wrestle under his, given name and all that. But I don't know, man. I love the Blue Blazer for who he was. I don't know if they put him under a mask because he was Bret's brother or what the reasoning behind that was, man, but it worked for that time, and I loved it, man. So it was probably one of the highlights of the match, because no one else on either of those teams were doing, the moves and the moving around the ring the way he was.
Yeah, even in basic moves, Owen had a different flair. He had it was like a different move set, a different way to slam guys, a different way to do most of his moves, really. So everything really stuck out when the Blue Blazer was in the ring. He wasn't doing any backflips here. And unfortunately, after what happened with the hammer and the headbutt to the groin, he wasn't going to do a whole lot after that.
Yeah, that slowed him down a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't notice though. I mean, he's going through everything that that they had planned or whatever. Quite the trooper, because he never misses a beat. The Masked Man lands a gut wrench and a power slam. Then he goes up top looking for a flying splash. But Jimmy Hart distracts the referee, even though there's 2 of them. And Honky Tonk going to shove the Blazer off the top rope. Owen landing knees first on the mat, injuring his leg in the process. I guess he kicked his leg out of his leg there.
94.
And the Hammer sees the opening, adjusts that heartbreaker, that shin guard of his, and quickly applies the figure 4, which gets the submission 12 minutes and 20 seconds. The Blue Blazer eliminated. In fact, that was Owen's first loss on TV, maybe in all here in the company at this point. Owen Hart submitting here on pay-per-view. But back to that unintentional low blow and that leapfrog spot real quick. Owen continues with the match after that. It's amazing that he kept working at 100% after that blow, because he's going to miss the next month and a half of in-ring action due to a serious groin injury. Reportedly, one of his testicles swelled up to the size of a softball, at least according to the Hitman. So, no, it was reported in the Observer and other places that Owen did indeed suffer. It was a legit injury to the groin, and there was swelling. And I've even seen it reported that there was surgery, but I haven't gotten that far in my news reading, so I can't confirm that. But to continue the match and have suffered such a, well, you know how that might feel. I don't know how he continued the way he did.
Yeah, I mean, I've been struck there on occasion, but yeah, never had anything swollen up to the size of a golf or a softball, not a golf ball. But I don't know. You got to give a lot to Owen for finishing that match. He's newer, to the company.
Yeah.
He didn't know when. You got to shine. When you're given the opportunity. So you're right, man. He let it all hang out. No pun intended.
Oh, I see what you did there, lousy stinking hyena. Anywho, Owen Hart eliminated, and that leaves the heels now, looking at Brutai and the Ultimate Warrior are the remaining babyfaces left, the co-captains. Imagine that. Beefcake stepping in to check on Owen, but the heels begin to work him over, making quick tags between the three villains. It appears Brutai in trouble in the heel corner, Bass making sure to get in his licks, Honky Tonk finally electing to go in for the kill. Gonna skip the shake, go straight for the rattle, looking for that roll, looking to roll Beefer with that swinging neckbreaker. But the Barber able to counter with a backdrop. Gonna escape that, and the Warrior, once again, pacing wildly up and down the apron. It's hard to make a tag if you're not standing by the tag rope, asshole. But the Warrior ready to explode on his foes. I don't know if Warrior hasn't stopped moving.
You don't know what the hell a tag rope is, dude.
What? You boys.
When's he? Well, I guess, with Sting, but that wasn't, we're going to pretend that didn't happen. I was going to say in WWF, when was he ever on a tag team? You know what I mean?
Survivor Series. That's the answer. So that's what he's doing right here. I don't know that the guy ever stopped moving since he ran to the ring during the intro. I mean, he's still looking for that tag. I don't know that he's been tagged in other than a couple of brief
Cocaine's a hell of a drug, brother.
And it certainly is. Cocaine and steroids. I want to say they don't mix, but apparently they work for the Warrior. Maybe not in the long run, but they do back here in the 1980s, as Brutus clearly needs to tag out badly. But Honky Tonk Man gonna climb to the top rope. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. Honky Tonk Man on the top rope, and as he leaps off, straight into a shot from the Barber. And Beefer finally in control here. Series of hard right hands, hits an atomic drop before locking in the sleeper hold. There it is, Honky, though refusing to go down, uses his leverage, leaning into the ropes, and both men tumble through the ropes and out to the floor, where Brutus reapplies the sleeper hold. What the fuck are you doing, Brutai? And you guys might have guessed it. Two of the top names, can't be pinned, pal. Beefcake and Honky Tonk Man take a double count out here in one of the faster counts from a Hebner. 15 minutes, 39 seconds into the matchup. Double elimination. Boy, did we not hate these when we were growing up?
Well, yeah, man, because, you didn't see these guys. It wasn't like, later on when you would see all these different guys in the ring together, especially the Raws and things like that once they started having main event type matches on TV. So it's like this was your only opportunity to see this guy tag with that guy and face this guy in the ring. So, yeah, when there was double eliminations, disqualifications, whatever it was, yeah, it was a bummer.
And they would continue to do this every year at Survivor Series and continue to, even into 91. Remember the Flair match where everybody gets eliminated at the same time besides Ric Flair? Talk about a total schmoz. And of course, Brett had to be involved in that as well. Yeah, but this just felt like a cop-out. I know Vince's mindset was to protect the talent that he was going to continue to push. So you only jobbed out the expendable guys. And then, of course, you had to have your main event finishes. You had to have a pinfall in your main event, obviously. But in between, all these other guys, the mid-carders, the upper mid-carders, they would protect them when they could. And they do it here with Brutus and Honky Tonk Man and the double count-out. And that leaves the Ultimate Warrior, the Intercontinental Champion, versus Greg Valentine and Ron Bass in a 2-on-1 situation. But I'm not so sure who has the handicap here with the Warrior's energy level here tonight. So it is Warrior versus Valentine and Ron Bass. The remaining heel is going to corner the Warrior and execute a double team attack. Double clothesline from the heels is Valentine going to drop his patented hammer elbow, but Warrior kicking out before the ref can even count one. You got to be fucking kidding me. Come on, UW. I mean, seriously. This late in the match, Valentine dropping his elbow and Warrior won't even take a 1 count. Does it get more Warrior than that?
I don't think it does, man. Unless, it's on the opposite spectrum, though. You know how many times Hogan would kick out? Well, not that he got pinned very often, but he always seemed to, kick out, after the 3, oh, you got me, but I was like a 10th of a second from kicking out, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when he was, you're right, when he was pinned, he loved to do that. And Warrior here, being Warrior, he's already become that guy here, and even in 1988, refusing to take a 1 count from Greg Valentine, you and your memories. Warrior refusing to take the 1 count, because in amateur wrestling, that's a pinfall, so that's what we'll tell ourselves. That's why. Now, don't get me wrong, 8-year-old me was loving Warrior kicking out before the 1. Yeah, fuck Greg Valentine is probably what I said.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
But here in 2025, I'm like, come on, man, at least let him get a fucking 1. You don't want to get 2. Okay, you're the Warrior. I get it. But Jesus Christ, dude. So anyways, the heel's going to remain in control. They're going to work Warrior over in their corner. The IC champ does come back wildly swinging at Greg Valentine, but he runs into an Outlaw boot. And the heel's now looking for another double clothesline, but this time the Warrior ducks, nailing his own clothesline instead, taking both guys down. So down go the heels. Ron Bass, unfortunately, he's the first one up, so he's the first one out. Warrior rushing at him with a double axe handle straight between the eyes. Poor Outlaw. Gets the 1, 2, 3. Ron Bass eliminated 17 minutes and 27 seconds, and now it's down to one-on-one. But not for long. Greg Valentine going to jump the Warrior as he's pinning Bass, but Warrior quickly shaking it off, ducking a clothesline, and rushing the hammer. Boom! Another double axe handle straight to the face. I don't think Valentine even knew what hit him. Warrior quickly drops down to make the cover, get the 1, 2, 3, 17 minutes and 50 seconds, the sole survivor, the Intercontinental Champion, the Ultimate Warrior. And, I want to get your opinions, your take, your memories on this here. But before we do, I just want to say, not one, but two guys go down to this running double axe handle deal. Does the Warrior ever even use this move again?
I was about to ask you the same thing. I was always confused around this time, 89, 90, whenever those WrestleMania cards came out. So I guess 90, because WrestleMania 6 was part of that edition. But yeah, man, also like on the back of those cards, it would say like the finisher move, right? I remember Warrior pressing guys out of the ring and letting them get counted out. Sure. I remember, of course, later on with the just pressing them, dropping them basically, and then the Warrior splash. But yeah, the double axe handle thing, I don't remember him using as a finisher ever. So maybe this was the only time. I don't know.
Which Nintendo game was it? Was it Wrestling Challenge? I know the A and B button together, he would do that double axe handle, like where you come down with it, like in a downward motion, which I guess maybe they got that from Survivor Series 88. I don't know. Cause it was odd to me that he didn't just do it to one guy. I get that, a clothesline, whatever. You take a guy out when you see the opportunity, but to pin two guys in a row with the same move that you had never used before or again, it was just really weird. But maybe because it was Warrior, they were like, just do whatever the fuck and go home. Cause they're not going to try to teach him anything. I don't really know here, but
I just thought of another finisher he did for a little while, that shoulder block.
Oh, of course.
One of those Hasbro figures actually does that. Well, and he did it like 80 times to Macho Man in WrestleMania 7. So you can't forget about that.
Yeah, so the match here live on pay-per-view goes basically 18 minutes. It's chopped to 10 minutes on Coliseum Video, so they cut almost half the match out. It is basically all the eliminations, the early eliminations. That's all we get. It's like chop, 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 straight from one elimination to the next, and then we get the last few minutes here with Beefcake and Honky forward. So Ultimate Warrior, the sole survivor, the Intercontinental Champion. So sky's the limit. Is Jetpack on his back right now for the Warrior character here in the WWF.
Yeah, man. I mean, watching that match, when I was younger, I thought 10 minutes, whatever you said it was on the Coliseum version, that's the one that I was watching as a kid. So I was thinking, damn, man, like they really got to it, and he kicked ass in like record time. But lo and behold, they cut out a good 7-8 minutes. So it's nice to be able to watch the whole thing on Peacock.
Yeah, it's great. It took years to get a live version of this particular pay-per-view and be able to watch it again. And the Coliseum Video version is all we had, and we're going to talk about that a lot here in just a moment, the Coliseum Video version of this show, because they changed some things up and they did do some more editing. But going back to this match quickly, Bad News Brown, the elimination made sense. I talked about we didn't like DQs, we didn't like countouts. It was different. Bad News Brown, the character, was different from everybody else in the company, right? I don't want to call him Stone Cold because he didn't have that kind of aggression with the character, but he certainly was that character where I'm not a babyface, I'm not a heel, I'm a bad guy, but I don't align with the other bad guys. And so that elimination at least made sense. It was different. It stuck out, and it was like, damn, it's a count out, but that was kind of cool at the end of the day when you think about it.
Yeah, man, I like Bad News. Last two in the WrestleMania 4 Battle Royal against my guy, Brett. And this probably just speaks to my lack of imagination, back in the day, but I couldn't wait to get my hands on like a black G.I. Joe, like a Roadblock or someone, because Bad News Brown was definitely, one of my first, black wrestlers that I was able to, to name as soon as I was able to acquire one of those Joes. Like I said, man, lack of imagination. You literally could have made any G.I. Joe, like Bad News Brown, but nope, the G.I. Joe actually had to be black too. So, whatever.
You want to talk about lack of imagination? My Sergeant Slaughter was Sergeant Slaughter. I mean, so you have that, but.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So was mine, man. Of course.
I think we've explained this in past episodes, but it's been quite a while. So a few people might be scratching their head. What are they talking about G.I. Joes? Basically.
Oh, I know. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Basically, when we were kids, rather than use the Hasbros and the LJNs and things because they didn't move, they didn't bend really, the perfect toy for wrestling was a G.I. Joe. All their ligament, their knees bent, their elbows bent. They could perform moves. They could do whatever we wanted to do with them. And so we went and got the Hasbro ring, and we named every G.I. Joe we owned a wrestler, right? And so that was, and I had like something like 140 some at some point. So I had basically all the entire WWF and WCW roster and whoever else I wanted. So it was ridiculous. I will admit.
Yeah, and I started small. I had like 15, and then I remember when I got my 30th G.I. Joe, I was like, I can actually have a full Royal Rumble, man. This is great.
Because heaven forbid we use the same G.I. Joe twice, right? We couldn't. That's impossible.
Again, lack of imagination, man.
This is my Jim Brunzell and my Harvey Whippleman. No, I don't know. But so.
And my Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, there you go. So, man, I would have liked to have seen, Honky and Beefcake, some sort of a real, even if one of them had to do the schmoz, I would have liked to have seen the other one get pinned in some fashion, because we already got the bad news count out as well. And it did feel a little anticlimactic there at the end when it came down to the Warrior versus Valentine and Bass, based on where they were on the roster versus him. I mean, I didn't mind it, but it would have been nice if it lasted a couple minutes longer. But given the people involved, probably wise not to go any longer than that. Boom, boom, elimination, the end. Otherwise, really fun opener. And again, I just go back to, I remember the first time ever watching this. Even then, as a kid, when I did have an imagination and I did think everybody was on equal ground, even then I saw Warrior versus Ron Bass and Greg Valentine. And at 8, 9 years old, I'm going, are you kidding me? Really? I mean, this is what we're doing here. Even then I knew these guys are done.
I had a similar thought, back then, oh, really? Why, anticlimactic, definitely it was the right word. But, as an adult, or even before I was an adult, just as a teenager, I was able to appreciate things like the Survivor Series, the Royal Rumble, because I'm not sure if they were using the tagline yet, anything could happen in WWF, WWE, whatever. But, I mean, those were the times when you could see maybe a mid-card or underutilized guy, get a little bit more of a push than they would in a singles match or a tag match. So,
sure.
Looking back, it was nice that they didn't just keep the two main event guys till the very end every time,
Oh, no, I look at it from that standpoint. I totally agree with you. It's just, man, up against the Warrior, they stood no chance. And I mean, it took him.
Yeah, there was never a doubt in my mind that Warrior is going to win.
Took him less than 2 minutes to get in there and finish him off. So, but the Warrior goes over. The right guy goes over. There, again, like I said, the jetpack's on his back. He's going to the moon right now, heading into 1989. Bigger things to come for the Warrior over the next couple years. Going to be fun covering all of that. But in the meantime, this match, constant motion, never any downtime. They worked the kinks out for from the first Survivor Series, where there was some rest holds and things that didn't really need to be there in the Macho Man Honky match. And I feel like, there was electricity here where the match just kept flowing. It kept feeling like, okay, we're starting off hot. Where do we get into the lull? But there was no lull. It just kept going. And bonus points to the Warrior, who basically wrestled the equivalent of the entire match by running around on the apron. My God, talk about burning energy.
Yeah, no kidding. The guy probably walked or ran, 3 miles in that match.
Walk. Yes, indeed.
Walk.
Well, inside joke. Kudos to everyone involved in this match, though. Everybody played their part well. Even the guys doing the job at the end, they hung in there. They let Warrior pin them. I don't know if they have much of an option at this point. I'm sure Valentine wasn't necessarily happy with Warrior kicking out before the 1 count. But what's he going to do at this point in his career, right? He's not going to complain. I'm imagining if Valentine was to complain here, he'd wind up in a feud with Ronnie Garvin for a fucking year. And we know that's never going to happen.
Yeah, good call.
All right, guys, at this point in the show, we are heading into the 20-man, 10-team match of survival. But before we get there, we're going to take this quick WrestleCopia timeout.
Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at WrestleCopia.com. And to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to uswapodcast.com.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. But that's not all. You can also check out the Pro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. And of course, now would be a fantastic time to become a WrestleCopia patron over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, where you get so many gifts, including all of my insanely detailed show notes for every episode of the Grenade Show, Regional Wrestling, and the Monday Warfare podcast. You'll also get early access to a lot of the podcasts here on the WrestleCopia brand, where you can listen days and sometimes as much as a week earlier than the rest of the listeners. But that's still not all, guys. You also get at least a dozen digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure each and every month, plus random bonus video drops, and of course, the Patreon-exclusive Watch-Along series covering many past WWF and WCW events. And if that's not all, Videocasts, also now a part of Patreon. No subscription, cancel anytime. Give it a try for a month, guys. I think you'll like the content that I offer, and every penny of it goes right back here into paying the bills. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia. Help me pay some of the bills to keep the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and all of the great shows here up and running for the months and the years to come.
This is Wrestling Nostalgia, the podcast that dives into wrestling history. Hey, wrestling fans, I'm Dave Dynasty, and if you enjoy podcasts that are knowledgeable and history-driven, then Wrestling Nostalgia is for you. With great guests and fun interviews, there are over 200 episodes in our archives. We chat with several first-time guests and often cover topics not discussed on other podcasts. Look up Wrestling Nostalgia on your favorite podcast platform and visit all of our links at linktree/WrestlePod. That is linktr.ee/RASSLEPOD. And remember, wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.
All right, guys, hope you're having a good time here with the definitive edition of Survivor Series 88, and what a definitive edition it is. 40 minutes on the Warrior match. Didn't see that coming, did you?
No, I mean, twice as long as the match itself, man. But hey, what can you do when you're reminiscing?
What you gonna do, brother? So here we go. Second match, according to the live version, is indeed that 20-man, 10-team match of survival. One of the greatest matches of all time by my estimation, at least in Survivor Series history. But oddly, if you rent the Coliseum video version, which is, again, chopped down to 2 hours, they edit out a couple of the matches heavily. The Warrior match and the upcoming Jake Roberts-Andre match are chopped up pretty good, but the two matches left intact are, of course, the main event, the Mega Powers, and this 20-man tag. But they also do something else very interesting, and I got my theories and whatnot, but I want to get your take on it, because growing up, renting this tape as often as we did, my mind was blown when along came, I don't know if it was the Wrestling Almanac, I don't remember, the PWI Almanac, whatever it was, the results somewhere, to where I found out that the Warriors match was first, Demolition's match was second, because on Coliseum Video, it was this 20-man tag that opened the tape, and the Warriors match was second.
I always remember the tag match being first, man. And I watched this tag match bar none, single-handedly, like the most watched Survivor Series match of any Survivor Series, any year, any match, anything. So, yeah, I was very familiar with that. As a matter of fact, I think I reached out to you within the last few years, at least. I guess I hadn't watched it on, Peacock or the network or whatever recently enough to notice this. But I remember asking you, man, like, I thought that tag match was first on this pay-per-view, and I didn't even find that out till like within the last, 3 to 5 years, man.
Right. Now, I remember when the Almanac or whatever it was came out and they put all the results in there. My initial thought was, they put the matches in the wrong order. Ha ha ha, Warriors wasn't first, but yeah, it was. Surprise, surprise. And I assume they did that based on the fact that this match was in complete form, and the Warrior match so chopped up. Maybe they didn't want to start that way. I don't really know specifically what the logic behind it was, but I'm so glad they did it. And I'm so glad you mentioned how many times you watched this particular match, because whenever you wanted to watch a Survivor Series or just watch some fun, good old school 1980s wrestling, you could pop in the Survivor Series 88 Coliseum video and watch a 42-minute match from beginning to end in its completion. And you felt full, right? Like you had your fill. I don't need to watch any more of the pay-per-view. I don't need to watch any more wrestling. I just watched a 42-minute match, and you just turned the tape off.
Yeah.
Not because the rest of it didn't have, it's good points and whatnot. It was just because, hey man, that was 42 minutes straight of wrestling, right? So, but I got my fill out of that. So I agree with you. I had to have watched this match more than any other match in any Survivor Series ever.
Well, and it was just convenient for the time, man, because we had to use VHS tapes. So knowing it was the first match, finish watching it, rewind it to the beginning, it's ready to go. You don't got to try to fast forward your way through, With it being the first match, it was nice and easy. I'll put it that way. I was about to mention fast forwarding past the Warrior match, but we didn't have to do that.
No, so they had that, whoever, for all the shit that I give the people who produce the Coliseum videos, because clearly a lot of times there was a lot of laziness involved, matches re-shown on some of those best of the WWFs. In Survivor Series 87, when they make the one cut in the tag match there, they pick the time, instead of eliminating some of that 15 minutes of the Islanders kicking the shit out of the Killer Bees and Young Stallions, they decide to leave out the elimination of the British Bulldogs. How do you leave out a complete elimination in an edit? That's just lazy work to me, but they did a good job here. If they had to fit everything into 2 hours, I can't complain. I think they left in the right match. And so I know they did, because I enjoyed it as much as you. We both loved this match. We both watched this match just constantly. It felt like, whether, I was renting it or when I got to finally make a copy. Kayfabe that, guys. But it was nice to go back and watch this as often as I wanted to. And I got to do it again for the first time in a long time. In fact, this past Thanksgiving, 2024, my son went back, watched 1989. Of course, I covered 1987 not that long ago, so I did a video cast for 87 around Thanksgiving this last year. And might have watched 90 probably, but I purposely skipped 88 because I knew this was coming, and I just wanted it all to be new again. And so that's where we're at right now, guys, as we jump into this one.
Yeah, and another reason I love this so much, man, is just because my favorite tag teams of all time are both in this match, Hart Foundation, Demolition. Probably doesn't even need to be said at this point. I think I mentioned it somehow, some way on every show I've ever been on.
Oh my God.
But yeah,
it's a who's who.
Those two teams, the British Bulldogs are still together. The Rockers, man, I loved them too. It was awesome as a kid and as an adult, man. I still love it now. I just watched it earlier today.
Yeah.
just because.
Yeah. Well, it's an amazing time in the tag team situation here in the WWF. It never got any better than 88, 89, if you ask me. And so out first are the heel team, Demolition, the co-captains and tag team champions, leading out the Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, the fabulous Rougeaus, Jacques and Raymond, or Ramon, depending on what day it is, Gorilla, the Bolsheviks, Nikolai Volkov and Boris Zukov, and the Conquistadors. Boy, that really took us for a loop when we were kids. We'll talk about that a lot, I'm sure, as we get into this matchup. Now, 4 managers reportedly at ringside for this one. You have Mr. Fuji with Axe and Smash. You have Bobby Heenan with his new Brainbusters. Jimmy Hart, of course, has acquired the fabulous Rougeaus. And if you pay close attention, when the heels are making their entrance, Howard Finkel announces, along with their manager Slick, the Bolsheviks. And he had been managing Nikolai going back to 1986 when he took over for Fred Blassie. So he was the manager of the Bolsheviks. But oddly, there is no Slick. Howard Finkel announcing Slick for the match, and I guess a last-minute call that, yeah, you don't have to manage those shitholes anymore, pal.
Yeah, that's a good observation, man. I can't say that I recall or remember that. Well, yeah, no Slick for the match, even though he was announced. Interesting.
Yeah, I've watched it, probably as many times as you have over the years, and I never noticed it until, I started doing this research or whatever you want to call it here, where I'm taking notes and I go, where the fuck's Slick? And there was no Slick. Even Howard Finkel was fooled here, and he's usually not fooled. He kind of knows what's happening. So that's why I said it had to be a last-minute deal to pull Slick from the Bolsheviks. And as we'll see on the grenade moving forward, Slick is gone from the Bolsheviks. So they must have made the call right here at the Richfield Coliseum that, nah, you're done. They don't need a manager anymore.
That was a weird marriage to begin with, man. Like, I just didn't see the connection. Like, why is Slick managing the Bolsheviks anyway, man?
Well, he inherited Boris after Iron Sheik left, I suppose, is basically how that all came about. But I agree with you. It was still a weird combination. I don't know why the Bolsheviks needed a manager. I mean, usually a manager can bring somebody up. In this case, they were bringing Slick down. So good riddance, I say there. As, watching the next team come out was just insane. You talked about some of the teams led by the captains, the Warlord and Barbarian, the Powers of Pain, Hart Foundation, Bret the Hitman Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Then come the Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, not to be outdone by the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid. And then the Young Stallions, Jimmy Powers and Paul Roma out there as well. Boy, I mean, they stick out like a sore thumb.
Last team.
Yeah. I mean, they do stick out like a sore thumb, but at the same time, watching those other four teams team up, I mean, that's insane to have those four teams at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, it was unheard of, man, seeing like all the talent in that ring, good and bad, the heels and the faces. But yeah, those four top teams all, on the same side of the ring, is kind of ridiculous watching that.
Yeah.
Hey, I know this is really off topic. And I think I answered my own question. I was going to ask if the Rougeaus had their music yet here, but they all came out to Demolition. I do remember that being like one of the longest plays of Demolition's entrance music ever, because I would, record it. I would actually use that Survivor Series match to record their music when I wanted to, because they played it for so long. It was awesome.
Awesome. Good stuff. Yeah. Demolition, man. It was one of the best. And that's another thing that was so cool here. I think I have it in my notes, so I don't want to ruin that. We'll get to it in just a moment, but it involves Demolition's music. So we'll get there in a moment. But for as many teams as we have out here, 10 teams, there's not a whole lot to report right now, feud-wise, going on in the WWF. Tag team champions Demolition, they've been defending their titles more often than not, at least since late July, against the British Bulldogs, who are finishing up with the company tonight. This is the final matchup for Davey Boy and Dynamite, the tag team. Ditto can be said for the Rockers, Conquistadors, Powers of Pain, Bolsheviks. Those are matches that have been on the house shows for the last 90 days or so. All matches that have been going on, but none of them actually feuds. And then we have the Brainbusters, who have just arrived a few weeks ago. They've been putting away the Young Stallions on recent house shows. And even though the Powers of Pain have made it clear their goal is to one day dethrone Demolition of the titles, the only true feud we have between any of these teams is between the Hart Foundation and the fabulous Rougeaus. Of course, the Hart's the former team of Jimmy Hart, the Rougeaus, the new team of manager Jimmy Hart. And to add a little insult to injury, Jimmy Hart going to give his contract, his 25% of the Hart Foundation's contract, to the Rougeau brothers. So even when they wrestle, if they lose, they still get paid. So I'm sure the Hitman's not liking that.
I'm sure he's got some sort of issue with it, but what can you do, brother?
Lousy, no good double cross, stinking hyena. So unless you count the shoot issues, and we talked about that several weeks ago on the Grenade Now between the Bulldogs and the Rougeau brothers, yeah, there's not a whole lot here to talk about other than some good wrestling action coming. And so the Warrior survives his match, and as we hear the Warriors' music slowly fade out from that last match, immediately we hear the familiar music of Demolition begin to blast. I wrote, oh man, here we go. Shit is hitting hard, because we go from the Warriors' music to Demolition. And we see all the heel teams enter, but that's only half the match. Then the babyface team comes out. Now, minus the Baron, are the Powers of Pain. Remember, Baron von Raschke debuts right around SummerSlam time with the POP as their babyface manager, but he's gone now without any explanation, and they never mention him again, and that's going to be for good reason, as we will see here by the end of this matchup. So the babyface side enters the ring, and then we get that camera cut. A sea of humanity and one of the most awesome visuals in all of wrestling history. My God, look at the talent. The camera panning from left to right in that ring, chills up my spine every time I see this visual.
I share the same sentiment on that, man. It's amazing.
It's insane to look at all of these guys and just know that they're all in one match, that they were all here at the same time, and they're all thrown in here. And of course, yes, I know people are going to joke, the Young Stallions or the Bolsheviks, and of course the Conquistadors. Okay, right. But you still have 7 of the greatest tag teams.
Even if it was 4-on-4 and those 2 teams were removed, it would still be, yes, one of the greatest matches of all time.
Yeah, that's what I said. I mean, you still have at least 7 of the greatest tag teams in history in one match. It's unbelievable to get to this. And the babyface is going to get together over there in the corner with a big whoa Bundy. British Bulldogs not having any of that shit, though. Conquistador, Jose Luis Rivera, ready to start out for the heels side. Remember your memories of the first time you watched this match and saw the Conquistadors out here on a pay-per-view?
I mean, if I'm being honest, the very first time I saw it and I saw the Conquistadors, I thought they were just jobbers. I was like, sure. Who are they filling in for? I had no idea who they even were. And I really didn't know they had names. I thought they were like Uno and Dos.
Yes. They're 1 and 2 back in this era. Of course, they became Uno and Dos later on. Okay. I think when Edge and Christian were portraying them, they were Uno and Dos. But I'm going to give them their due diligence. Jose Luis Rivera, Jose Estrada were great talents, great hands. That's why they kept him around. And Jose Luis Rivera was a jack of all trades. They kept him here throughout most of the 80s, maybe even into 1990, if I remember correctly, as a Conquistador. The lone last surviving Conquistador doing jobs on TV. But you're absolutely right. They were high-end enhancement guys. They were job guys by this point in time. They've been doing jobs to the Young Stallions, so they were job guys. But no, in all seriousness, to have them here, clearly they just needed to fit that 5th and final spot on the team, and it just happened to work out. But, man, they were workhorses. They could work and they could go. And so, joke's on you. Because, yeah, they're job guys, but they're actually really good.
Yeah. I mean, they impressed me in that match. I ain't going to lie.
Yeah, so you're going to see plenty of Conquistadors coming up, as well as 9 other tag teams. And again, another Hebner, the inside referee. I'm sure this is the other Hebner, whichever one reffed the first match. Now, I'm sure the fans are thinking, why is the same guy out? No, it's both of them. They're both here reffing the show, but we pretend there is only Dave. Poor Earl. Tim White on the floor. So we are set for action. 2 referees out here. Bell sounds. We're underway. Right, Gorilla? Monsoon making sure to mention the ring reinforced for this one. And to be honest with you, to try and call this one move for move would be nearly impossible. So we're going to just discuss some of the highlights and, of course, the eliminations, if that's all right with you. Davey Boy Smith going to start out for his team, tossing the Conquistador around. Surprisingly, we get some Bulldogs Rougeaus interaction early on in the matchup. I was a little surprised for that after I knew what happened. Davey Boy pressing Jacques on top of Raymond at one point, and that went off without a hitch. So good job, guys. Everybody being professional here tonight. And then it's fast tags. The fast tags begin. Shawn Michaels with a backflip off the top rope, sticking the landing, and the Rocker's going to rock Boris Zukov in there. We get a little bit of everything now. Marty Jannetty has a fun run with both of the Brainbusters. Totally going to find himself in the babyface side for a fun spot, bumping around, getting hit by everybody. Jacques coming in, missing a reverse cross body block. Marty going to tag to Dynamite Kid. And I said, oh shit, I didn't realize. Based on, years later, you would learn the issues between the Dynamite Kid and Jacques Rougeau punching his teeth out. But at this point in time, in 2025, I said, oh my God, they're in the ring together. You're allowing Dynamite Kid on his last day here in the company to tag in across the ring from Jacques Rougeau. I know as kids, we didn't know anything about it, but as an adult, I mean, was that a wise decision to make for Jacques?
I mean, I don't know if I would have done it personally. And like you said, I had no idea about any of that, back when I was watching it as a kid. Sure. But yeah, looking back, it was a questionable decision, but at least they stayed professional. It all looked professionally done. So. Yeah,
no, they were okay in there. They weren't in there for long, but they were in there together, which just blew my mind. Surprisingly, professional Dynamite Kid here lands a snap suplex, because of course he does. Gorilla and Jesse actually, if you pay attention, subtly acknowledge the feud between the two men, Dynamite and Jacques. Dynamite with a Briscoe roll, the sunset flip out of the corner on Raymond, going to get a 2 count, and we trade out. Constant motion, quick tags, tons of guys coming in and out, 20 guys out there, keep in mind, just constant motion, everybody moving. Lots of tagging. Great spot. Axe going to whip Jimmy Powers into a Jacques Rougeau dropkick to the face. Then your man, the Hitman, tagging in to get some revenge on those lousy, no good, stinking Rougeaus. And the crowd erupts for the Hitman as Raymond makes the mistake of telegraphing a backdrop. Bret Hart going to counter with an inside cradle, and he gets a surprise 1, 2, 3. Bret Hart pinning Raymond Rougeau very early in the matchup, 5 minutes and 36 seconds into this 20-man match. Seemed odd at the time because the next elimination won't occur for another 10 minutes. So growing up, this is abrupt. This was early. Why did they do that? And then we learn later on through the dirt sheets and things of that nature that they simply booked it this way to give the Rougeaus time to get backstage, get dressed, and get the hell out of there before the Bulldogs did.
Before the Bulldogs, nice. Yeah, I guess that makes sense, knowing that.
And I want to be clear, I'm not mocking the Root, and I know Raymond would have stood up to King Kong based on, his personality in real life, but
yeah.
But at the same time, I want to be clear, I'm not saying the Rougeaus were scared and they ran away. This was the WWF's plan. They said the Bulldogs are leaving. We don't know what they're capable of or what they may or may not do. We don't want any shit. So you guys are out. You're out in 5 minutes. The Bulldogs are going to be here for a much longer. Get your shit and get out of here. Go back to the Marriott. Go to Hopkins Airport. Do what you got to do, but you ain't staying here. So the Rougeaus basically forced to leave the Richfield Coliseum.
So you say the proverbial they, but we're really just talking about Dynamite. The Davey Boy partake in any of these shenanigans?
Well, of course, they were both, doing the ribs together and whatnot. Now, Davey Boy wasn't,
right,
involved in the physicality, but you don't know, I would say the Davey Boy likely wouldn't have gotten involved.
He would have stuck up for Dynamite if things came down to it, though. So,
right.
He would have.
And they just didn't want the politics. They didn't want the bullshit. The Bulldogs were done. They were capable of doing anything at that point, and especially Dynamite.
Right. And they could have sicked Matilda on them, too. You never know.
You never know. Yeah, that's a good call. Matilda, I caught that. Matilda was not here. So she's already gone from the company before the Bulldogs. Because that was Vince's big thing to sell the mascot. Oh, Matilda's going to be there at the pay-per-view, pal. And he did not do that for Survivor Series, and she was not here. So waltzing Matilda straight out of the WWF. We'll have to wait for Winston to pop up in 1991. But right now, guys, we continue on with the action. So the Rougeau brothers eliminated very early, and what follows is 10 minutes of glory, is what I call it here. Spots and action galore. Paul Roma busting out a no-hands leap to the top rope for a reverse body block. Paul Roma, Jimmy Powers of the two, I have to say Roma definitely was the better of the two. There was a little potential there in Paul Roma.
Yeah, Power and Glory, man. It wasn't meant to be yet, but that would have been awesome if they were that fifth tag team on either side.
Sure.
Instead of the Bolsheviks.
I'll leave the Conquistadors in over the Bolsheviks because they can actually work at least, right? So we'll do the Bolsheviks out.
Yeah, and then we would have had to replace Powers and Roma since Roma would be on Power and Glory. So who would we put over on that side? Just fantasy booking here.
Coco Beware, the Blue Blazer. I don't know. I don't have a clue.
Hey,
high energy,
right?
There you go.
So.
High energy. Oh yeah. Well, so we get some action. Roma with that just no hands, leaps straight to the top. What a vertical jump there to the top rope. Reverse body block on Nikolai, going to give Roma a 2 count. And that's followed up by a standing drop kick by the Anvil. No matter how many times I see it, always impressed when the 300-pound Jim Neidhart would bust out that standing drop kick. Very nimble back in his heyday. Hooking clothesline by Neidhart, taking smash down, allowing the tag to the Barbarian. And we get our first look at Demolition versus the Powers of Pain, albeit brief here. From there, Barb rocks Conquistador Jose Estrada with his patented big boot. And then the Demos with their double team beatdown on the Hitman, even clubbering Shawn Michaels as well. So Demolition beating the asses of both Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. See, they paid their dues, guys. As Smash gives us a big ha right into the camera. Shawn draped across the heel top turnbuckle in all sorts of trouble. Nikolai going to bust out his gorilla press into a backbreaker. And then Arn Anderson coming in to deliver that spine buster on Shawn. It'll beat him in 1989, but not so much here in 1988. Shawn Michaels kicking out of the spine buster. What did you make of the brain busters
here? One of the best in the business.
Absolutely, the best.
I like the brain busters, man. Yeah, Arn Anderson with his spine buster, the spike pile driver, man. There was nothing not to like about the brain busters. And then Heenan, he was already managing them, right? In unsung tag team, I don't think they ever really found their footing or got into a groove in the WWF. But they could have made a long run, man, if they didn't, go back to WCW.
Yeah, well, I mean, you do the math. 1988, they come in right before Survivor Series here, and they're gone at Survivor Series. Tully's already gone by Survivor Series 89. Heenan replaces him in the ring, so they're only here for a year, and they do get that little tag team title run. But at the same time, like you said, they're kind of an unsung tag team in the WWF because they were only there for just about a year. And a lot of these other teams stuck around for many years, Demolition, Hart Foundation, the Rockers, and teams like that, so they have a longevity. But of course, Arn and Tully were a huge tag team, part of the Horsemen in the NWA, but a lot of WWF fans, and only WWF fans, people that didn't really watch WCW, they kind of crap on the Busters pretty often about how bland they were and how generic they were and how boring they were. And I don't know what they were watching. Now, I will say that I was used to seeing Arn and Tully cut their own promos in the NWA. They were masters at it, both of them. But Bobby Heenan did a lot of the talking here for them in the WWF, so that kind of probably hurt their personality traits a little bit, I think. But at the same time, I mean, their wrestling was top notch, whether it was WCW or the WWF. They were always had great tag team matches. We're going to see a bunch of them coming. They're about to feud with the Rockers. Yeah,
well, I wonder if the timing would have happened a little differently too. I think Ric Flair around this time was also kind of having some disagreements with Crockett or whoever was running the promotion at the time, and I know he didn't quite make the jump or whatever, like Arn and Tully, but I wonder if they could have came as a group, if they would have been able to recreate, some semblance of the Four Horsemen and made a longer run in WWF.
That's a good call. I don't know what Vince would have done with that. He liked his own creations, but at the same time, there was talk back in the late summer of Ric Flair potentially jumping. Of course, Crockett going to sell to Ted Turner, and Dusty takes off, and then Ric Flair's kind of the man in charge by that point, so we know he's not moving at that, moving into 1989. Right. But yeah, there was, that point right before Arn and Tully jump, Flair, there was discussion. Flair might leave as well. We know Barry Windham, the other member of the Horsemen, is going to be here in 1989. So as the Widowmaker, unfortunately, but it did, it's kind of interesting to see what all Vince does here with the Horsemen. He basically takes them apart, dismantles what we knew. But Arn and Tully, looking great out here. Conquistador back in, slamming Shawn, but slams him too close to the babyface corner. In comes Marty Jannetty with just an awesome counter here. I don't know if you remember the spot, but he spins through a hip toss attempt, lands on his feet, and then delivers a power slam. So basically, Marty coming off the ropes, Conquistador trying to hip toss him. Marty jumps up into the air and does a complete 360 spin, landing on his feet to counter the move. He's the only guy I've ever seen do it. I used to try that a lot growing up, and I could never pull it off.
Yeah, I will honestly say I never tried doing that growing up, and I definitely couldn't do it nowadays. But yeah, man, Marty was an agile little dude.
Yeah, he was a hell of a worker. I've said this before on shows, and you probably remember this, but when the Rockers were a team, I was a Marty Jannetty guy. I was not a Shawn Michaels guy. I wasn't a Shawn Michaels guy.
I remember that.
Yeah. I wasn't a Shawn Michaels guy until he took him and threw him through the window, and I said, something? There's something about the Shawn Michaels character, but up until that day, I'd always been a Marty Jannetty guy. Always had been. I'm glad you paid attention. I don't know. Were you a Shawn or Marty guy?
I don't know. I just liked them as a team. I don't know that I had a favorite, but, obviously it turned into a Shawn Michaels guy when they went into their singles. I don't know why I had to become pick one or the other, but I felt like I had to choose a side, and I went Shawn's way.
It was really funny when they told a good story, and I liked both guys. I think in that instance, I always wanted the babyface to win. Like when Shawn and Marty split, had Marty not got fired, I wouldn't have wanted Marty to win the feud, but I think I would have liked Shawn more, if that makes any sense, because that's the way the story should have went. So I would have enjoyed the story with the babyface going over, but at the same time, I would have said, yeah, but I'm sticking with the Shawn Michaels guy, right? So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Shawn had some moments too, man. Like, I can't remember which year he was one of the last, 4 or 5 in the Rumble. And I'm talking before 94, obviously he was Final Four, and then he won one and all that stuff. But I think it was 89, 90, something like that. Maybe 91. I'm not sure, but I don't know. He just had some moments where it's you know what? I could kind of see, he's pulling away. Even though he's still part of the Rockers, I could see he kind of seemed like maybe he just had a little bit more I don't know.
More personality. Yeah, I agree with you. Marty, in the ring, I felt was just more fluid, a lot more just unique wrestling and things of that nature. But
yeah, there's no doubt about that.
But right. You could see that Marty was the leader in regards to, Shawn broke in after Marty as well, so I'm sure he learned a lot from Marty. But you could see Marty was already had it in the wrestling level, but Shawn slowly was developing personality, a character, if you will. And so that goes a long way. And then of course, Shawn maybe he did do the drugs that Marty did, because we know what we're going to get later in life with Shawn Michaels. But at the same time, Marty, I mean, I think he was fired more times than anybody with the company.
Yeah, and rehired more times than anybody.
Well, you got to be rehired in order to get fired again, right, pal? I mean, but talent shines through when you can get hired that many times. Vince didn't bring guys back I think of him and Neidhart have to be going neck and neck with whoever got rehired more. But I have to say Marty wins that out. Plus, it's not really fair because Neidhart got a lot of those jobs later on, because Stu Hart would reportedly call Vince and beg him to give the big rhino a job so that his daughter could, have a house to live in and whatnot. So,
right, yeah, and don't forget was it Leaf Cassidy or Al Snow, or
right? Yeah,
whatever the new Rockers,
the new and improved Rockers. Yeah,
that's debatable.
Well, I mean, we'll go back to 88. We'll talk about the original, the real deal, the Midnight Rockers here, or the Rockers in the WWF. Nikolai in the ring now, going to land his patented spin kick. I always love this. Shout out to Gene Jackson, my co-host on the Coliseum videocast. We always have fun with Big Nick's spin kick. Basically kind of does a little pivot, a little turn, and he does this spin kick like he's kicking your head off, but it never gets above the guy's thigh. But Nikolai had to work it into every match, and he hits it here on Davey Boy Smith. You remember Nikolai's spin kick?
Vaguely, man. Well, obviously I remember it from this match because I just, watched it recently to refresh my mind. But yeah, I don't remember him using it often. For all I know, maybe he did it every single match. But I did this when I saw it. I was just like, he did that.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's easily missed. That's for sure. But he sold it like it was the greatest thing in the world. So he managed to get it in most of his matches. So we continue on with the matchup. Few tags later, we wind up with the Warlord finally in there with perhaps the most insane deadweight press slam in history, catching a Conquistador completely off balance, has him at his waistline, catches him at his waistline, and then in one clean motion, putting him over his head to slam him, press slam, no struggle, put him up there like a rag doll. Steroids are a hell of a drug, at least for the Warlord.
Yeah, no kidding, man. And those guys, it's not like they were feather, light or anything like that, like the Rockers or the small team. They had some weight to them, man. So that's like pretty 230
impressive. Probably. And let me be clear too, you guys go back and watch this. It wasn't like a clean jerk. He didn't jerk him up there. He just put him up over his head like he was lifting a pillow. It was insane, the strength of the Warlord here. Yeah. But up next is Demolition Axe going to tag in, and now we have the Warlord and Axe in, and the fans really come alive. They were alive for the whole matchup, but they really want to see. There's money to be made here between the Demolition and Powers of Pain, I feel. Unfortunately, I don't know that they go in the right direction with it, but we do see the Warlord and Axe trading shots. Warlord getting the upper hand, but Axe going to cut him off. Double team then by the Demolition. But the Warlord going to make the tag out to his partner, the Barbarian, who comes in with a flying shoulder tackle and a big boot to Smash, who refuses to bump. Come on, Smash, you're going to bump for the Barbarian boot? Neither team wants to go down for the other one, it would seem here. But Tully Blanchard going to tag in, but runs into a press by Barbarian, gets dropped right across the top rope, which brings in the Anvil, who follows up with a power slam on Tully, but only gets a 2 count. And then we get what may be the only encounter between the Brainbusters versus the Dynamite Kid, which is just unfortunate. Imagine getting to watch some Bulldog Brainbuster matches.
Yeah, those would have been some good matches, man. Guaranteed.
Yeah, it would have been an amazing. Arn and Tully in here with Dynamite Kid, the heel side all over Dynamite, beating him down. That is until somebody makes the call to tag in Boris Zukov, who misses a knee drop. Leave it to Boris. And Dynamite able to make the hot tag out to Jimmy Powers, who is in the ring, a house of fire all over Zukov. Powers with a middle rope crossbody on Boris, who uses the momentum to carry it over. Zukov going to roll over on top, and the Stallions are eliminated. Boris Zukov scoring a pin here. Well, it was Jimmy Powers, but really, of all the teams you give Boris Zukov an elimination, Young Stallions eliminated 15 minutes, 44 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, if there was like sports betting app or whatever where you could pretty much bet on anything and everything nowadays, Boris had to probably be like the lowest on the list, or like had the worst odds to score a pinfall or a victory that match, man. That's crazy. But
yeah.
Maybe they know it's not too much longer till you guys are going to be exiting, so we'll throw you a bone.
Yeah, as a tag team, they're pretty much
exiting the match, not exiting the company.
Right. Well, yeah, that too. But no, as a tag team, they're pretty much going to be split up here before too long. Boris going to be given that job guy spot until closer to WrestleMania 6 time. Got to bring the Bolsheviks back together in time for that epic match with the Hart Foundation. But that's a ways off.
Yeah,
so we'll come back. We'll come back to 1988 here. Young Stallions eliminated. Remember, the Rougeaus were gone 10 minutes ago in the matchup, so that leaves 4 teams apiece. Shawn Michaels back in, bringing the momentum back with a flying fist drop on Boris, flying tackle in by the Barbarian as well, sending Zukov back into the heel corner. And this is what I talked about with you offline. I said, I'm going to mention something. I'm going to see if you remember it. I remember the first time you brought this up to me as kids, so... Yeah. An overzealous Tully Blanchard offers to tag in. He says, Boris, here you go. Here's my hand. Zukov making the tag out. In comes Tully Blanchard. Again, overzealous because he looks across the ring and he sees the Barbarian. And then he appears to be very reluctant to step into the ring. But Blanchard does so, enters the ring, looks at Barb, and does a chicken shit strut across the ring and immediately tags out to Nikolai Volkov. Now, that's just a funny little spot in the match, but we watched this separately for the first time ever. Like, we watched it together plenty of times, but the first time you ever watched this, you called me when you were done. Do you remember what you asked me about this spot?
Is it something that a look that Nikolai gave him or said to him when Tully tags out? Yeah, I do kind of remember. I can't remember what it was, or
like 35 fucking years ago. You still remember this? I remember it. So, call me on the phone. And you're like, hey, man, I was watching that tag. It was such an awesome match. I said, I know. You go, but there was this spot in there. Well, obviously, we weren't using the word spot, but you were like, there was this.
That's what I bring up of all the things.
yeah, that was your go-to. You go, Tully Blanchard got in the ring, and then he didn't want to wrestle, so he walked over and tagged in Nikolai. And Nikolai looked at him and made a disgusting look, like a disgusted look. And I said, without batting an eye, I'll remember my response. I go, that's just how Nikolai looks. And you go, oh, it is? I go, yeah.
So was there no look then? He was just looking at him regular?
He was just being Nikolai, as best I could tell, But basically, when you said that, I
do remember that.
Yeah, so it's funny to think back to just a random conversation. But yeah, out of this whole match, that was like your go-to. Like, man, Nikolai was disgusted at Tully Blanchard tagging him and didn't even wrestle. What a douche. But that's Tully being Tully. And I'll say this much though, we're almost 20 minutes into this match and the crowd 100% invested, very loud, monster heel heat here when Tully does that tag to Nikolai. The fans just hate Tully Blanchard. He knew how to get that whole asshole piece of shit heel thing over. Very few did it better. Oh, yeah. Axe though tags in, able to get the better of the Barbarian, chopping him down to his knees. See what I did there? Axe chopped him down. Jesse Ventura very impressed with Demolition taking down the Barbarian. But somehow we're back to Boris Zukov and Shawn Michaels. Tag team specialists, the Rockers, surprise Boris with a blind tag to Marty. Shawn gonna blast Boris in the gut, and he doubles over as Marty Jannetty comes in with a slingshot sunset flip to eliminate Boris. Hey, how'd you know the Bolsheviks are eliminated? 18 minutes, 19 seconds. Somebody go tell Slick, wherever the fuck he is, his team is gone.
I think he might be busy, he's probably busy with his new, bigger, better team.
Yeah, he's like, I got the Twin Towers. What the fuck I need these damn Bolsheviks for? That's a good call. That's probably why they made this call. I'm sure like Boss Man was telling him, hey, why is he still managing these Russians over here? He's got it's like, okay, good point. Valid. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Do I still get paid the same, brother? Yeah, you get paid the same, Slick. Oh, okay, fuck them guys. All right, that makes sense. And that's what the Rockers say right here. Boris Zukov eliminated, which means Nikolai also gone. And now there's a little room on the apron. Now the fans can actually see what the fuck is going on in the ring as well. That had to suck if you were down on the bottom rows there until some of these teams were.
Yeah, good call, man. I didn't even think about that. Could you imagine having floor seats for that match and you can't even see anything for the first half? Because you're blocked by guys.
Move out of the way, bitch. So Marty Jannetty going to come in with the Conquistador Rivera. Going to get a backdrop. Marty goes like 20 feet in the air. Warlord threw him a little higher in 1990, but this was a high elevated backdrop as well, as the heel's going to work over Jannetty and then work over Davey Boy Smith as well. Tully then again reluctantly tags in, but this time he does wrestle. So Blanchard sending Smith upside down in the corner, and the heel's going to continue to beat on Davey Boy. Finally, though, the Anvil tagging in to take apart the Conquistadors. The Harts then landing their version of the Demolition Decapitation, which I'm sure the demos love to see across the ring. What a douchebag move. And that's a Bret Hart call. Hey, we did it first. So they kept that move in their repertoire, where they would basically do the Demolition Decapitation. The Anvil would put the guy over his knee. Bret would come off the middle rope with the elbow. The only difference was Axe came down like a normal elbow drop. Bret would come down with that Bret Hart kind of forward elbow deal. But did that ever strike you as odd growing up? Like, why are they doing the fucking Demolition's move?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had that thought. Bret had that, like that. I guess I call it like a pinpoint, elbow.
Yes, sure.
So it was different, but yeah, at the same time, man, it's like Demolition's finisher, dude. You find something else. Who was doing it first?
Demolition.
Were the Hart Foundation doing that before Demolition came?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
That's why I said I could see Bret Hart having that. Oh, we were doing it first, so I'm not going to give it up. I invented that move.
I could definitely, I could see him doing that, man. But eventually they did, because I don't remember them doing it like into 89 and 90 much. He would still do the elbow off the second rope, but I don't think like Anvil was holding him across the knee or nothing.
Right. Obviously, one of the 5 moves of doom later in his career as a singles wrestler. But yeah, here back, we didn't see him do it every match, but usually in a competitive match, they would bust that out as sort of not a finisher either, right? Demolition, that was their finisher. Hearts would do it as kind of a setup move, a signature move, if you will. But again, the Demolition are standing across the ring while they're doing it. But I guess, they were okay with it. I'm sure they weren't petty. But, I go back and I joke, are going into SummerSlam when Ron Bass debuted his Spurs and he cut up Beefcake and he named them the Maverick Brothers, Brett and Bart. And I said, before I even got to the next week, I said, oh man, that's not going to fly with Bret Hart. And sure enough, by week 2, they were Brad and Bart or something or other like that. So it was
the smoking gun.
No,
Bart, that was Billy and Bart.
Billy and Bart. But point being that as soon as I heard the word Brett, knowing the Hitman, I said that's not going to last. Hey, that's my name. Your spur can't be named my name. So heaven forbid, Brett. So
yeah. Well, did you ever notice no one else wore pink either, man? At least while Brett was around.
Well, that wasn't a common color back then. I think I liked them in the hot pink. Had anybody else worn that, I would have been upset too. So I'll give them that much. They did invent the hot pink at the very least. So
yeah.
So the Hart Foundation continue to pummel here in the ring the Conquistador. Then Shawn Michaels in, landing a dropkick. Marty in with a spinning elbow, and the Conquistador doesn't know where to go, trying to tag in to the babyface side. Dynamite Kid in next, snap suplex, flying knee drop, going to get himself a 2 count. As Jesse Ventura says, he's impressed with the Masked Man's resilience as well. So lots of kicking out here by the Conquistadors during this portion of the matchup, and it doesn't end there. It might not last much longer, though. The Barbarian in, delivering a power slam. At this point, as this continues on, and I'm watching them take basically all these signature moves, as they're called in the video games, I remember, at least to me, I don't know if you, I kind of vaguely remember you asking me, like, how the fuck are these guys kicking out of all these moves? But I remember marveling myself as, why do they have superpowers here at the Survivor Series? They're kicking out of finishers and shit.
Yeah, I mean, no kidding, dude. Like, growing up watching Saturday morning, superstars and enhancement talent, I'll use that word instead of jobbers, but you didn't see them guys kicking out of moves. So, yeah, I was thinking the same thing about the Conquistadors. Like, who are these guys, man? Like, they're kicking out of, like, barbarian power slams. That's unheard of.
I remember the first time watching this, and every time somebody getting eliminated, me going, why are the Conquistadors still in their jokes on me? Because they're going to be in here for a while. As the Masked Man finally knocked into his corner here, he's able to tag out to Tully Blanchard, who lands a cheap shot and immediately brings in Demolition to pound down the Barbarian. Smash gonna apply a neck vice on Barb, but the Barbarian impressively powering his way free. Even still, the heels continue the control as the tag team work continues on the heel side. Arn, though, going to telegraph a backdrop. Barbarian able to lower the boom. Tag out to Marty Jannetty, who hits a spinning back elbow. Always had a nice one of those. Couple more tags on both sides, and we end up with Tully Blanchard coming off the middle rope with a crossbody. I think Neidhart was supposed to catch him, but he didn't realize it, so they cover it, and Neidhart takes a bump. Tully basically landing a crossbody off the middle rope, barely, and gets a 2 count out of it. Neidhart reversing a suplex And then in comes the Hitman once again. Backbreaker and inverted atomic drop to Tully Blanchard. Now, Tully going to reverse an Irish whip and charge into the corner. The Hitman, though, going to go up and over to behind what I suppose was a not so excellently executed German suplex with a bridge, because Tully gets his shoulder up and the ref counts 1, 2, 3. Now, Bret Hart presumes that he had the pin and he raises his hands in victory, but quickly realizes it is the Hart Foundation who are eliminated. Bret Hart with a German. Tully gets that shoulder up and the Hart Foundation out. 27 minutes and 8 seconds. Lousy, stinking hyenas. No good double cross.
Yeah, I didn't like that. Obviously, I wanted the Hart Foundation to win it all, or at least have it come down to Demolition versus the Hart Foundation. So you can't have it all, man. And, that kind of finish, I hadn't seen a lot, at that point in my life.
Right, it wasn't done to death yet.
I guess. Right, yeah. So, there's that.
Yeah, that may have been the first time I actually paid attention to that finish, to the point where I'm like, wait a minute, what happened, huh? And don't get me wrong, we're almost 30 minutes into this match, but I'm with you. I wanted to see the Hart Foundation there at the end. Win or lose, I wanted to see them somewhere around the end of the matchup. So to have them eliminated by the Brainbusters, though, really puts Arn and Tully over strong. They haven't been here but a month at this point, so to give them a pin over Bret Hart, even out of a fluke here, out of a German, so to speak, it's a pretty big deal to give an Arn and Tully a little rub here by eliminating someone before they're eliminated.
Yeah, kudos to them.
Well, the action doesn't stop. The Hart Foundation eliminated, but it takes both referees to convince the Hitman that he has indeed been pinned. Because of course it does, Brett. Meanwhile, the action continues. Dynamite Kid back in with a tombstone on Tully Blanchard. Double clothesline by the Bulldogs as well. Shawn Michaels going to tag in, and in comes Arn Anderson to make the save for Tully, which brings in Marty Jannetty. And we've got ourselves a 4-way melee. The Rockers versus the Brainbusters. How cool is that? Chaos ensues, both referees in the ring. Stereo super kicks by the Rockers send the Busters out to the floor. As we learn, both teams have been disqualified. A double elimination. You must be reading my notes. That is literally the next word in my notes. I wrote, boo, what a ripoff. But the fight all the way up the aisle and to the locker room. But going back to this, a double elimination. 28 minutes and 44 seconds, just less than 2 minutes after the Hearts are eliminated. We lose the Rockers and the Busters. So not really a fan of this elimination at all.
Yeah, that elimination kind of cut the contenders in half, man. I was kind of bummed about that.
Yeah, we lost three of the best teams in the entire match in the last 2 minutes. They had to go, but I hate the whole double elimination here. It just really felt like it was out of nowhere. It's like, the entire match, nobody came in to help their partners, but for some reason, at this particular moment, that's when Arn decides he's going to help Tully. That's when Marty decides he's going to help Shawn. And then in a matter of seconds, the referees are like, fuck this, you're all gone. And then they battle all the way up the aisle into the backstage area. And that's kind of going to start their feud. Although on commentary here, Jesse and Gorilla sell it as no love lost, says Monsoon, between these two teams. But what they're referencing hasn't happened yet on TV. It was taped already, but it hasn't aired yet. So there's no love here at all yet, Gorilla, or lost here at all yet, Gorilla. But hot little segment. The crowd loved it, even if it was a double elimination. The live fans surprised me a lot back then, because we would sit at home and get mad, DQs, count-outs, this and that. But the fans live seemed to eat it up. They loved watching these four guys. And we didn't see that a lot back then. Anybody, much less tag teams, brawling up the aisleway.
Yeah, for that period of time, it was kind of a newer thing. I guess even though they were both eliminated, just the action of them brawling all the way to the back, kept the fans involved. So credit to the Clevelanders, man.
Yeah,
they kept the event lively.
Good crowd, lively crowd coming, especially after stuffing their faces all day. My God, the last thing I want to do is jump up and down and rock that stomach, but here we are.
Oh, my goodness. Could you imagine? Yeah.
Me going to a pay-per-view on Thanksgiving as a kid was never going to happen. Good old Mama's cooking, and that was pretty much it. We were stuck there. But, eventually got to order the Survivor Series. And then, of course, they moved it from Thanksgiving to Thanksgiving Eve, and then all the way back to Sunday as the years progressed. But here we are, Thanksgiving night. The crowd is hot, no doubt about it. And, you didn't see that a lot. 30-minute matches weren't very common in the WWF. This is a 40-minute match, but we're 30 minutes in, and this crowd has not lost their energy. They still have interest in the story being told, which is huge, to keep their attention for that long.
Yeah, I mean, what sticks out to me too, man, was for that nearly the entire 40 minutes. I mean, the action just kept going and going. It's not like there were rest holds. There wasn't like a lot of, laying around like you see nowadays to give, two guys time to do their spots in the ring. I mean, there was always something going on. So I guess these people didn't really have time to, take a bathroom break or go to the concession stands. They probably were going to miss something if they did.
No, and you never knew what you were going to get next because they didn't know what was coming next. Of course, they knew their elimination spots, but it's not like they sat backstage and said, all right, we got 42 minutes. Let's figure out who's getting tagged in what order for 42. It didn't happen. You just tagged who you tagged. You did your spots, and these guys were going. They were ready to go, and that's the way it was the entire matchup. As unfortunately, we're down to 8 men, 4 teams, 2 on each side, still remaining. It's the Powers of Pain and the British Bulldogs versus Demolition and the Conquistadors. That's very, very peculiar. The heel side manages to take over, though, taking down the Dynamite Kid until a Conquistador missing a top rope somersault senton. All right, don't see that move a lot back in the day. Powers of Pain into maul Mr. Jose Estrada Conquistador. Warlord with a gut wrench throw. Barbarian boot sends Estrada over to his corner where he's able to tag in his partner. In comes Conquistador Rivera into a Davy Boy delayed suplex. Got to get him a 2 count. Then a tag out to Demolition Axe. Takes a crucifix from Smith. And again, Smith, another near fall there. As we get a little back and forth there, Davy Boy in the heel corner. Smash in the babyface corner. Both guys getting beat down by the opposite team. Smith with a gorilla press slam and his patented running power slam on Conquistador Rivera. But rather than cover, he lets him tag out to Axe. Well, that was bizarre. Davy Boy Smith making a call here, landing his patented power slam, and then watching the Conquistador tag out to Axe. But again, it is Davy Boy. You never know what you're going to get. Barbarian winds up back for the babyface side of the ring, gets worked over in the heel corner and on the floor. Nice standing dropkick by Rivera, but Barbarian not going to bump, not for a Conquistador. Dynamite back in with a gut-wrench suplex and a falling headbutt on Rivera, which only gets a near fall. Wow, they're just kicking out of everything in this. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's like a different team.
I gotta give you credit too, man, for giving credit to the men behind the masks, Rivera and Estrada. But I gotta ask, was there something that gives it away to you, like physically, or was it the moves they do, or how do you know who's in the ring at what time? Because I still to this day have no idea.
Oh yeah, it's if you know what you're looking for, it's pretty obvious. Rivera's taller and leaner, Jose Luis Rivera, and Jose Estrada, who's a little older too, but still, you wouldn't know it by the way he could move around even at this point in his career. But Jose Estrada, the shorter of the two, and he's got a little belly on him. So that's how you tell them apart. But Jose Estrada had been, I guess what you would call a job guy, an enhancement guy, one of the top enhancement guys throughout a lot of the 1970s for the WWF. And he would come and go throughout the 80s, and they eventually bring him back in the end of 87. And he's been here ever since, on again, off again, teaming with Jose Luis Rivera, who's been here for years under many different gimmicks. He was Mac Rivera, Jose Luis Rivera as a job guy, as a babyface job guy. But then as a heel, they put him under the hood as a Red Shadow. He was a Shadow tag team. He was, and they became a Conquistador. So yeah, they've been here off and on for many, many years because they're respected in their role in the ring. So, but yeah, going back to the actual question, it's just Estrada's leaner and taller. It's a lot easier to tell them apart if you're looking for that.
Okay. Yeah, I never really did. I always just thought they were like clones of each other. But
until I started covering this on the Grenade, I never tried to look to tell them apart. It was just the Conquistadors. It didn't really matter. But in a match like this, now if this was a squash match on Superstars, I'd just be like, a Conquistador did a job. But I just felt like, I got to give them their due diligence here on the pay-per-view. So
yeah, man. Yeah, that's good.
But Dynamite Kid hitting a snap suplex on Smash, and then he goes up to the top rope looking for a diving headbutt, which could be it. But nobody home. Smash out of the way, and he's going to capitalize, sizing the groggy Dynamite up for a clothesline to take the pin. The British Bulldogs eliminated 36 minutes, 18 seconds, and gone from the World Wrestling Federation. And the Rougeaus also gone from Cleveland, Ohio by this point, I'd imagine. They had 30 minutes to pack their bags and get the hell out of Dodge, did the Rougeaus. And so you have to believe those eliminations were purposely, intentionally booked that far apart to give Rougeaus the time they needed.
Yeah, looking back, it makes total sense. Was it just me, man, or did that clothesline from Smash, could that have been done just a little better? Like, I don't know,
better.
man, it was kind of disappointing.
I see, in past times when I've read people do reviews of this show online, I always read people mention, like, oh, that's one of those Survivor Series clotheslines, because it's probably the first, but it won't be the last time we see somebody fall to a kind of a weak move, and be like, why is that a finisher here? Only at the Survivor Series. And it was here.
Yeah, it's their last match in the company, though. You know what I mean? Like, take his head off. Make it look real.
No, I totally agree. As badass as they were, Demolition, both guys really were professionals. And so, I don't know, maybe Smash meant to hit him harder and it just came off awkward, and that's what we got. But I like the setup. Yeah. Dynamite missed that diving headbutt, so he's out on his feet. Smash capitalizes. All you really need is a good clothesline. Was it a good one? Well, no. Like you pointed out, it wasn't, but we'll pretend that it was, because the British Bulldogs are no more, gone from the WWF, and Davey Boy will not return for about 2 years. And when he does, he'll be back solo. Dynamite Kid's final match here in the WWF forever. Yeah,
he was a force to be reckoned with while he was there. What did he go on to do afterwards? I mean, I don't want to take it down a rabbit hole or nothing, but just curious. Did he go to Japan or something?
Yeah, well, so he stopped off in Stampede, obviously. Goes up there and works with Davey for a couple months before they start their All Japan tours. And they're going to do that for a while before Davey comes back to basically Dynamite, it just deteriorates in rapid fashion. So even though he continues to work for the next couple years in Japan, he's not even the Dynamite we see here, unfortunately.
Yeah, I watched one of his later matches and I couldn't even recognize him.
Yeah, definitely. It's unfortunate, what happened with him. And you look at his age. I mean, the guy was done by his mid-20s because he had done so much to his body early on. Just the craziness, the crazy dives and the crazy things he was doing that nobody else was doing, but that was probably why. And now everybody wants to copy Dynamite Kid. And it's like, why would you want to copy somebody who, his body was destroyed by the age of 30? But I mean, that's what's happening. That's what we're seeing today, but I don't want to go into today. We'll move away from there. We'll move back to the olden days of 1988. And so just like that, the Bulldogs gone. We are down to the Powers of Pain, the POP, taking on Demolition and the Conquistadors. Let me ask you something, Jesse. Are you down with the POP?
Yeah, you know me.
In all seriousness, what was your take? And it might have been hindsight.
Powers of Pain, I mean,
as babyfaces.
I don't know, man. Babyfaces, no, really didn't work for me. As a Demolition fan, I don't know, dude. Like, I thought Powers of Pain, of course, you probably have heard this, and me and you have probably talked about this. It kind of seemed like they were WWF's answer to to clone or mimic the Road Warriors. But it's like Demolition's kind of already got the face paint. They got their own thing. I don't know, man. Like, I love Barbarian. Don't get me wrong. Warlord, whatever. That's neither here nor there. But I don't know. Like, the team itself, they're not in my top 10. I'll put it that way. So,
they looked awesome,
I was definitely rooting for the demos.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really couldn't say, that was another one where I like both teams when they were in this position. When they flip-flop, it was Demolition all the way, because heel Powers of Pain, well, we'll get there. But so we come down to it's Demolition and the Conquistadors on one side. On the other side, it's just the Warlord and the Barbarian, but we'll have to wait and see what happens here. Warlord going to miss a charge and the Demolition working over his shoulder at that point. But then with his team, the tag team champions in control and in a 4-on-2 situation, Mr. Fuji oddly climbs onto the apron, waving his cane, and then, just as oddly, climbs back down. Okay, that was weird. But nonetheless, later, Fuji back on the apron a second time. He must have jumped the gun on his first cue. That was my guess anyway. Actually, I've never looked for this in my entire life until I did the review here. But if you pay attention, Fuji clearly jumped the gun the first time he got up on the apron. But if you watch, you can see Smash visibly look over at Mr. Fuji on the second time and give him that little Iggy, that little go ahead for Fuji to get, all right, now's the time, Fuji. Now we're going to do the spot. So you see Fuji.
Man, I can't say that I've noticed that. That's awesome.
Never looked for it, and I just happened to see it this time. But so Fuji back up on the apron a second time, waving his cane, making demands of Smash, but Hebner threatening to disqualify the Demolition if Fuji doesn't get down. And then as Smash runs the ropes, Fuji accidentally pulls the middle rope down. Smash goes tumbling through the ropes, and once he gets his knee brace unstuck from the ropes, takes the fall to the floor. Smash down and out on the outside thanks to his own manager, and Demolition wind up being counted out. Now, Gorilla Monsoon, he thinks it was a faux pas on Fuji's part, but Jesse Ventura, he said he saw Fuji blatantly open the ropes. Well, Jesse does tell it like it is, but that doesn't make sense in context. Fuji's team in control, tag team champions, outnumbering the Powers of Pain, and he just screws the Demolition over? Very odd, but Demolition eliminated 39 minutes, 47 seconds. Now, we're not going to get into what happens after that, but talk to me about the count out, the initial elimination here. How puzzled were you at this?
Well, extremely puzzled, because that left the Conquistadors as, the sole team representing the heel faction over there. So I was like, are you freaking kidding me right now? But you just said something that I guess I had never realized or read or anything. And I always thought that the way Smash fell through the ropes, when Fuji pulled it, I thought it was like a masterful performance, because the way it takes him like an extra, like he does like an extra, I don't know, like flippity flop, whatever you want to call it, before he falls down. I thought that it looked better that way than if he were to just fall out smoothly. But I never knew it was because he got his knee pad, you said? Got
knee
stuck
brace.
in the rope.
Smash had that brace.
Knee brace. Yeah, but I never realized that was the cause. I thought maybe he was just like overselling, like a Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan deal or something. But I don't know, man. That's something I didn't know until just now when you said it.
Well, now that you mention it, I think it does, even though it's a little more awkward. It's like, you got caught in the ropes or whatever. It did make it look more. It added more to it than just a fall through the ropes to the floor on padding, right?
Yeah,
especially for
exactly.
Demolition.
Yeah.
But so for Smash to go out there. And, they're counted out. Mr. Fuji basically, and there was, in the way he opened the ropes, there was no accident. Even though it was an accident, it wasn't, and we know it wasn't, but I mean, there was no like Fuji trying to use the rope to climb up or climb down. There was no Fuji sitting on the rope. It was just, here comes Smash. I'm going to open this up and screw my guy over. Very confusing at that point in time. What was going on? It continues to get more confusing, by the way, guys. So, Axe on the outside, Smash getting counted out. Axe calling for a timeout, but we don't have those in wrestling, so Smash indeed counted out. Demolition eliminated, and Axe is hot at Mr. Fuji. Fuji says that he's the boss, wrapping his cane at the chest of Axe, even butting him with the end of the cane, but Axe gonna no-sell it, shoving Fuji away, and Axe turning around to walk away. Don't ever do that. Mr. Fuji blasting Axe across the back with his cane. And we see a little slight sell there from him. That hurt, not too much, but it hurt a little bit. Rocking Axe, but look out, Fuji. Behind him is Smash, hoisting Fuji up in the air. Fuji kicking his feet, little comedy there. Big slam on the floor. Demolition slamming their own manager, former manager, and the crowd has no idea how to respond. Did Demolition just turn face? What the hell is going on? Again, it continues to get more confusing for the fans, but at this point, we hear a pop because Fuji's getting slammed, but immediately afterwards, they're like, do we cheer Demolition? Like, what is happening here?
Yeah, it was interesting, man. And like you said, even still to come, it's a little confusing the way the crowd's reacting to things. To me, man, like I always read it as, Fuji turned on Demolition, therefore, if anything, Demolition are the new, face, as opposed to, what the crowd seems to think here in the near future. But, I mean, it was a heelish thing to do, a face. If Fuji was going to be turning face, he's not going to be hitting someone with a cane. He's not going to be costing them the match. You know what I mean? So, like, I guess I knew, even as a kid, like, I realized, by the end of the match, like, what had happened. But I don't know. Not everyone in the crowd kind of felt that way.
No, in fact, I don't think anybody else. I would say very few felt that. In fact, honestly, on the body slam.
What did you think?
Well,
didn't you see what was going on, or did you think it was possible that Fuji all of a sudden was a face after this?
Well, and I think I was in line with the crowd in regards to this. So when Demolition slammed Fuji, immediately I'm thinking, oh, awesome, they're turning face. But then, as the confused crowd looks on, the Powers of Pain walk over to help Mr. Fuji up, and they do a babyface type thing. They dust him off and escort him over to their corner. And I wrote here in my notes, what the fuck is going on? Now, obviously, we know what's going on. Fuji just turned, but I wrote here in my notes the questions that were going through my head then and clearly going through the fans' heads here in 1988. Did Fuji just turn babyface? Is Fuji replacing the Baron as a babyface manager? Now, that's what I thought on first watch, and I think the crowd led me to that belief as well, because like I said, when Demolition slammed Fuji, I go, oh, they're turning face. But when the good guy Powers of Pain, who have no reason to turn heel, come over and dust him off and help him up, and the crowd begins to cheer, I go, oh shit, Mr. Fuji's a good guy now. And that's what I thought on first watch. But Jesse thinks something stinks here, and it definitely ain't Cleveland. He definitely wasn't. He had to put that in there. So yeah. Powers of Pain help up Mr. Fuji, bring him over to their corner, and now it's down to two teams, the Conquistadors and the Powers of Pain, and Fuji almost immediately tripping up Jose Estrada with his cane from the floor. Crowd popping for Fuji interfering, by the way. Barbarian diving headbutt running off the ropes gets the 1, 2, 3. The Powers of Pain, the sole surviving tag team in this matchup. Match goes 42 minutes, 23 seconds. Holy shit, longest match I'd watched up to that point. And the crowd just popping louder for everything they're doing. They popped for the Mr. Fuji, the little dust off. They popped for the pinfall here. And then it gets real tricky because then the Powers of Pain hoist their apparently new manager, Mr. Fuji, up on their shoulders, and the crowd cheers even more. So again, you talk about confusion. The crowd's certainly confused, but we're not done yet. Demolition quickly reemerged from the locker room and hit the ring. If history has taught us anything, the babyfaces always clear the ring. But Demolition wins the slugfest and clear the Powers of Pain from the ring. And then the Demolition's theme song begins to play. But I thought they're the heels. Or are they?
That was the dead giveaway, man. They're not going to play the heels theme song to end the match.
And that's where the dead silence kicks in from the crowd, because now they're like, wait a minute, what the fuck? I thought these guys were the faces, but they cleared the ring and their music's playing. So they're the crowd completely confused. And even Gorilla does not overtly make it obvious on commentary, even for the pay-per-view fans, but he doesn't sound like he's any longer in support of the Powers of Pain. So Jesse Ventura has no idea what's going on. So that doesn't help things at all. And I'm going to go back now. And I just happened to hear this last week. Google is watching me because for some reason in my feed, I randomly got Warlord commenting on the Survivor Series 88 turn. Okay. So I'm like, oh, why would they know that
man.
So
I got to read that or hear it.
Yeah, it's on YouTube, and basically Warlord stating what we would come, I think, if we just sat down and surmised, and what I did years ago, he pretty much said everything I thought, only he confirmed it for me, which, I appreciate being able to find that. And so Warlord basically saying they didn't know they were turning until he got to the Richfield Coliseum. So this was kind of a last-minute idea where we're going to see interviews on upcoming house show, the event centers, with Demolition still with Mr. Fuji. I mean, it was a last minute plan. The double turn did not go over with the fans. Very confused because, as Warlord points out in his shoot interview, that when they did the double turn in the Richfield Coliseum, the crowd was fucking confused. You can hear this, especially after Demolition come back out and run off the Powers of Pain. But everybody was confused moving forward. So if you go and look at results at the TV tapings or Madison Square Garden or pretty much anywhere, they would send the Powers of Pain out early to beat up on some underneath baby faces to get over the fact that they're heels, so that when they came out later to wrestle, you booed them because the fans still thought they were good guys with Mr. Fuji.
That's funny.
Yeah. So
they had to make it clear.
Yeah. They had to make it clear. And Warlord said it was like the biggest pain in the ass month in wrestling because like they were having to get in their gear early just to come out to beat some guys up in order to wrestle in the second half of the show. And they had to stick around longer than they needed to drive the point home until, they could get it on TV that the Powers of Pain are in fact heels.
Yeah, I mean, the whole double switch like that, I don't know how many times they, implemented that, prior to the Survivor Series, but I don't know, maybe the crowd just hadn't seen it enough to even know what the hell was going on. I mean, I get the confusion, but it just like everything was pointing to the fact that Demolition's turning face. So I don't know, man. Yeah, I'm glad Warlord kind of cleared that up for everybody.
Yeah, well, I look at this and you can tell by the fans. I mean, that basically the tale is told just listening to the fan reaction there. it's just weird cheers, weird boos, and at one point stunned silence. Nobody really knew what to make of any of this. And so now in years gone by, the hindsight warriors on the internet like to pretend that they knew what was going on as they watched it in real time. Guys, no, you didn't. Nobody did. Not in Richfield, not anywhere. Which is why for the next month, they had to keep doing this shit on every house show, TV taping, etc. They had to drive the point home in each individual market because nobody knew what the fuck happened.
So before you listened to that Warlord interview or podcast or whatever it was, did you know that as well? Like that they had to go and beat up a tag team earlier in the card to kind of drive the point home?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, it hasn't been that long, maybe a few years ago, when I was going through results and things, I noticed that and I go, oh, okay. And I immediately, I put the 2 and 2 together. Like, I bet they did that because the crowd didn't know to fucking cheer them. And sure enough, that was exactly what it was.
I was just going to mention, they kind of clear some things up just in a little while backstage when they interview them. So, I mean, I'm surprised they still had to go out there and, pull double duty at the house shows and stuff like that.
No, it's definitely an interesting choice to switch two people. They didn't do that a lot back in those days. And they obviously wanted the Powers of Pain as heels and Demolition as the babies here. I guess they thought they could get more out of the Powers as heels. I beg to differ, but what a matchup. Going back to the actual match, they keep the Rougeaus and the Bulldogs apart, though Dynamite behaved himself in the short time in there with the Rougeaus. Rockers and Brainbusters, great little teaser of things to come with those two teams. Demolition about to be propelled into the most over tag team in the company. No follow-ups, though, for the Conquistadors after that showing, which is just odd. I mean, everything they just did, 42 minutes in the ring, and you don't do anything with them afterwards. I guess they just needed a team in there to take that last fall that wouldn't be looking for revenge, right? Like, we need the Powers of Pain a few with Demolition, so them screwing the Conquistadors over, we know they're not coming back to look for a rematch.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, because I was just thinking to myself, why not any of the other teams, sans the Bolsheviks? Like,
well, I was
any of the other teams should have been that last team over the Conquistadors. But like you just said, though, man, that's a well-put point. They did need a team that's going to allow the Powers of Pain to keep pushing towards Demolition.
Right.
And then not have to worry about how it all ended in the schmaz or whatever you want to call it.
And that says a lot for the Conquistadors as workers as well. We trust you guys to go out there for 42 minutes. We know you guys are going to handle yourselves fine, and we don't want the Bolsheviks in that spot. So good call there by Vince and company. As Slick going to no-show his Russian tag team here. He's basically finished as their manager at this point. Hart Foundation getting a little revenge by pinning the Rougeaus, and then we get a fun little teaser of the Hearts and the Brainbusters as well. And then the Powers of Pain, who were cheered here, are turned heel. They lose their music, but they gain a manager who can't really talk, which is actually what they needed. And as a heel, as heels, they're relegated to mostly kicking and punching moving forward, and little of the cool high-impact moves we've been seeing from them as the baby faces, thus making them look awesome, a nice visual when they enter the ring, but super boring when the bell sounds.
Yeah, I mean, that WrestleMania match, there's not much I remember from it, other than the outcome. They weren't good heels. I think Barbarian kept the boot in his repertoire, though, right?
Oh, he always had the boot.
Still doing that.
Always had the boot.
They had presses and all that. But yeah, kicking, punching.
I don't think you were a fan of my Barbarian boot. You're like, would you stop doing that?
Yeah. I almost disliked that as much as your Yokozuna corner bomb on the couch on me when I was sleeping.
Good times, old school. Yeah, absolutely. Well, so the Survivor Series 88, the tag team match in the books, one of the best series matches ever, I must say. And I've seen people claim that they like the 87 match better. And it's subjective. You can like what you like, but what the fuck were you guys watching? My God. I mean, the last 15 minutes of 87 is just Killer Bees and Young Stallions getting their asses handed to them and then winning the match. Not exactly the most fun time. I called it with Gene Jackson, and we talked about it as well. But this is just amazing. Like you said, from beginning to end, just boom, 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 constant motion, people tagging in and out, no rest holds. And if there was, it was like a 15-second deal. Amazing. Just an amazing matchup. I always remembered it fondly and just enjoyed it again as much as I did the first time I ever watched it.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, there's no comparison. Like 88 was hands down the better match, but, to each their own. You just don't see it like that anymore, man. You might have some tag team Survivor matches throughout the years, but nothing, like, they just stayed moving. Like,
right.
There was never really like a dead or a dull moment in that match. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was great. Unfortunately, we'll never see another one of these type of matches again because we're going to move to teams of 4 and they completely eliminate the tag team match. But I said it, I believe on the 87 show or somewhere along the lines, I said they came up with a great idea in that 20-man tag back in 87, but they perfected it here in 1988. Other than a couple of the eliminations I wasn't a fan of and the weird double turn, in general, we got 42 minutes of awesome action from some of the greatest talent in history, not just of the 80s, but in the history of wrestling, from the Hitman to Shawn Michaels and Arn Anderson and everybody really all around the block. So just very cool stuff, guys. As we conclude the first half of the Survivor Series, they go off to intermission here on the live show. We're going to do a couple of interviews for you guys as we wrap up here on the Grenade, as we go off now to Sean Mooney standing backstage with Bad News Brown.
Thank you, Gorilla. A break in the action here. Standing alongside me, Bad News Brown. And Bad News Brown, since joining the World Wrestling Federation, you have been a very independent soul. You very much proved that tonight. What happened out there?
Let me tell you, Beer Belly Sharecroppers, one thing. I smelt a conspiracy out there when my own teammate attacks me. I know that everybody in the World Wrestling Federation wants to be the first one to say that they beat Bad News Brown in the ring, but it's not going to happen. And let me tell you another thing. Survival Series means totally nothing to me. I've been a survivor on the streets of Harlem all my life, and there's only one thing that I'm concerned about, and that's the World Wrestling Federation Championship belt.
Well, Bad News Brown, and I asked this question with caution. What do you think, why do you think you deserve a shot at the Macho Man Randy Savage for the championship?
Why? Why? What, have you been on Mars or what? Everybody knows out there, everybody from the spineless cockroach on up knows why Bad News Brown deserves a title shot. The reason is because I have defeated everybody since I've been in the World Wrestling Federation. I won the WrestleMania Battle Royal. I have beaten everybody that they put against me. That's why I deserve a shot.
Well, I'm sure if you have this record that you say you possessed, I can't see why Jack Tunney wouldn't give you this opportunity to become the World Wrestling Federation champion.
Are you trying to say that I'm a liar or something? Let me tell you one thing. I've been calling Jack Tunney up. I've been sending him letters, but he don't want to answer me. But he will see me in person, and he will have to answer to me once and for all and tell me why.
Well, Bad News Brown, if you do get this championship shot at the Macho Man Randy Savage, two very contrasting styles. You prefer being alone, no one in your corner. What about the Macho Man Randy Savage? He has the lovely Elizabeth in his corner.
Oh, come on, it's obvious, all right? Here's the world champ with a skirt in his corner. I don't need anybody.
Well, Bad News Brown making his intentions very clear. He wants to be the next World Wrestling Federation champion. Back to you, Gorilla.
All right, so we get our obligatory beer-bellied sharecroppers line of the night there from Bad News Brown, who smelt a conspiracy, and he got the hell out of Dodge. He says he doesn't need no Survivor Series. It means nothing to him. He's been a survivor all his life on the streets of Harlem. The only thing important to Brown now is a shot at Randy Savage and the WWF title. The spineless cockroach, Randy Savage, he knows it. Bad News Brown undefeated. He won the WrestleMania Battle Royal. He deserves that title shot. Been calling Jack Tunney, sending letters, but no answer. But we do know, we have it on good authority, that Bad News Brown will see Jack Tunney very soon on TV, foreshadowing things to come. But Bad News Brown walks out of the match, says, I don't need those fools. And he's moving on to bigger things.
Yeah, well, good luck pursuing the world title there, Bad News. I don't know if I ever saw the match between him and Macho Man.
There's some coming up on the house shows. Yeah, on the house shows, there's a few. They may have made it to a Coliseum video for all I can remember off the top of my head. But yeah, there's definitely at least a couple, I believe, on the house shows. So we'll definitely get some of those up. I'll let you check it out. It's different, it's a different opponent for Randy Savage. It's a brief feud because it's going into the new year where the mega powers explode, pal. So it's not a long feud, but it's interesting. Yeah. It's something different for the Macho Man for sure. Coming out of Survivor Series, Bad News Brown. And now, guys, we go backstage one more time. This time, a Coliseum video exclusive interview with the Ultimate Warrior.
Well, thank you, Gene.
Brother, there must be a problem here, because it seems to me that you can still breathe properly. Well, the Ultimate Warrior can't, and neither can all the warriors out there, because the power got shoved down their throat so far they're having a hard time. But my team of 5, you see, they went without food. They went without sleep. They went without all the luxuries that normal mortals are used to having, because my team didn't care. They didn't want to show any mercy, and they knew that the Ultimate Warrior would stand through all the thick and thin with them. Every member on my team was a winner. Every member gave all they had. And when the done was done, we were all over.
The sole survivor and the Intercontinental Champion, the Ultimate Warrior, but he will say it was a team effort. Let's go back to the ring.
All right, Sean Mooney talking to the Warrior Man there, who says every member of his team was a winner, was a survivor. A sole survivor, says Mooney, but it was a team effort. The Ultimate Warrior gets the ultimate win, and it was kind of unique to see him there. He had a little bit of paint left hanging from his hair, but completely, no paint on his face. And I didn't really notice that back then, that Warrior there basically paint free.
Yeah, not something you saw very often. I think the closest thing to paint free was, it was probably later on though, when he had like just the Warrior symbol cheeks painted on his cheek. Yeah, I've seen it like that, but yeah, without paint at all. Yeah, didn't see that very often.
They claim they did that to humanize him more, to make the kids less afraid of him. That's what I heard anyway, when they put it on the cheek gimmick or whatever, but that wouldn't last too long. But Sean Mooney talking with the Warrior, talking with Bad News Brown, and then we go off to Mean Gene Okerlund, who's standing by with the Powers of Pain and their new manager, Mr. Fuji. Maybe we'll get some answers here.
Mr. Fuji, what in the world is going on? Did I see you tonight in the Survivor Series turn on Demolition?
Let me tell you, Gene, I made the Demolition. I made them champion. When I made them champion, their breeches got too big for them. Their head was swelling up. They thought they know more than the master. So the master in turn hunted and searched, and I found these two. And they will demolish the Demolition, and they will make them suffer like pigs they are.
Wait a minute, stop right there, Mr. Fuji. I'm going to interrupt, if I may. Gentlemen, I don't know if this man can be trusted.
Demolition, X Smash. What are you going to do now? You lose, Master Fuji. You better kiss goodbye for the World Championship title.
You know, Mr. Fuji, I've got to say this. I think the Demolition did as much for you as you did for them.
No way, Gene! I did everything for them. I made them work out, run, exercise. But they disrespect my discipline. And in turn, this is what's going to happen to them. I turn against them, yes, and they will pay.
All right, very quickly, any comment?
Demolition, you wouldn't listen. The Powers of Pain will listen to Master Fuji.
That's right.
All right,
They will
listen. Jesse Ventura, I don't think this man can be trusted. I really don't. Gentlemen, that's it. Please.
Well, a disgusted Gene Okerlund, appalled that Fuji used the word turned. You turned on Demolition. Ha! To align himself with the Powers of Pain, Fuji says the demos wouldn't listen. Too big for their britches, boy-san. They wouldn't listen to their master. He made Demolition, but they got too big. And now they suffer. Powers of Pain clearly now under the guidance of Fuji as the Baron, a forgotten piece of history. Demolition disrespected Fuji's discipline, he says, and they will pay. Mean Gene making sure to sell the Powers of Pain turn as heels, but nobody else seemed to get the memo.
I don't think the Coliseum fans probably saw that interview. I don't know if they pumped that into the arena or not, but I mean, that was clear to me. So yeah. For all you folks listening out there, Powers of Pain, they're the heels.
If you got the pay-per-view and you watched the live version, maybe you had an inkling of an idea after that promo that they had turned heel. But there we are, Mr. Fuji, Mean Gene doing his best to confirm the heel turn of the Powers of Pain. But again, nobody else really seems to understand that, at least at this point. But that's going to wrap it up here this week, guys. When we return, it's the other half of the Survivor Series. Team Jake and Hacksaw versus Andre the Giant, Dino Bravo and crew. And of course, the Mega Powers and the Twin Towers. A little bit of fun there. A really intriguing finish and lust in the eyes right around the corner. So much to still get into, man.
Dude, I mean, it's been a pleasure getting on here and reminiscing and reliving one of my favorite matches of all time. I think when I texted you earlier on, before doing the show, I probably watched this match at least 847 times. The tag match, of course, I'm referring to. But yeah, man, looking forward to finishing it off with you. I really appreciate the invite. Yeah, man, thanks a lot. Can't wait to do this again.
Yeah, it's good to have you back, man. We got 2 big matches still to come. We got I think Jake match goes about 30 minutes. The Hogan deal, a lot of shenanigans go on in there. But hey, the Red Rooster main eventing, not going to see that too often. Maybe never again, in fact, to be honest with you. But, well, he's in the Royal Rumble. Does that count? But we'll have to wait and see what happens there with the Rooster and company as we head into the second half of the Survivor Series. Stay tuned. Be back next week as we continue on the definitive edition of the Survivor Series review here on the Grenade.
Thanks, brother. Talk soon.
Thanks, Jesse, for joining in on this week's episode of The Grenade, covering the first half of Survivor Series 1988. And we're going to be back again next week, guys, to finish up this fun voyage back in time to November 24th, 1988, Thanksgiving night. We'll be back with more of that next week as Team Mega Powers battles Team Twin Towers, also the team of Jake and Hacksaw and everybody on their side taking on Andre, Dino Bravo, and crew. So 2 more big matches to go, lots to talk about, more promos, more sound bites on the way, including an extra little exclusive, if you will, at the end of the next round. Jesse Ventura may have uncovered something, may have seen something in the eyes of the Macho Man, but did the Macho Man see something in the eyes of the Hulkster? Little teaser there, guys. But until next time, we're going to wrap it up. Just encourage everybody to stop over to WrestleCopia.com. Check out all of the great shows we have going on right now, from Gene Jackson's Retro Wrestling Review to Dave Dynasty's Wrestling Nostalgia. We've got Bob Smith and the Outdated Wrestling Hour, and of course, the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories. The Wrestling Stoop with Bob Roop back this week as well. Go over and check that out. Bob talking about his time in Georgia. Can't forget the guys over at The Other Ship celebrating their 2nd year anniversary this week. Congratulations, guys. And of course, all of those podcasts available at all of your favorite podcast streaming platforms, as well as WrestleCopia. The gifts just keep coming. The tiers just keep growing. Talking about patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, patreon.com/WrestleCopia. Multiple tiers available. The $5 all access tier. Of course, the one that I feel that gives you the most bang for your buck, talking about the VIP Superfan tier, all the great video casts now up and running there at the VIP Superfan tier. And we've also reintroduced the Ultimate tier. Lots of new gifts coming up there at the Ultimate tier. You might want to go check that out. The WrestleCopia Patreon also now accepting annual memberships, meaning you can sign up for a full year, save yourselves a few bucks by doing it that way. Or you can join on a month-to-month basis. No subscription. You guys can cancel anytime. But lots of great video casts, including this right here, Survivor Series 88, the video cast with Gene Jackson, going to be dropping very shortly, guys. Be on the lookout for it. Another great Pro Wrestling Academy ready to drop with Dan Ginnity, covering a wild and bloody brawl between the former many-time NWA World Champion Harley Race versus Abdullah the Butcher, and a true classic when the NWA World Champion at the time, Terry Funk, steps in the ring with Jumbo Sharuda. It's a blast, guys. I guarantee. Go on and check that out right now. Plus, the Monday Warfare videocast returns, more September TV, and as promised several weeks ago on social media, part of that new Ultimate tier, part of the Big Ones collections, WrestleMania 3, one of the biggest events in wrestling history, coming to the Big Ones videocast series, and only part of the Ultimate tier. All of that and more, patreon.com/WrestleCopia. But until next time, going to wrap it up now, guys. We shall return with the rest of Survivor Series 88 and beyond here on the Wrestling Memory Grenade as the WWF 1988 project continues on. But until next time, this is Ray Russell saying, from pillar to post and coast to coast, you pull the pin and I'll pick up the pieces right here on the Wrestling Memory Grenade. We'll see you next week. Don't miss it. Be there!
What, have you been on Mars or what? Let me tell you, Beer Belly Sharecroppers, one thing. I smelt a conspiracy out there. Everybody knows out there, everybody from the spineless cockroach on up knows why Bad News Brown deserves a title shot. The reason is because I have defeated everybody since I've been in the World Wrestling Federation. I won the WrestleMania Battle Royal.
Mr. Fuji, what in the world is going on? Did I see you tonight in the Survivor Series turn on Demolition?
I made the Demolition. I made them champion. Their breeches got too big for them. Their head was swelling up. They thought they know more than the master. So the master in turn hunted and searched, and I found these two. And they will demolish the Demolition, and they will make them suffer like pigs they are.
Every member on my team was a winner. Every member gave all they had. And when the done was done, we were all over.
The sole survivor and the Intercontinental Champion, the Ultimate Warrior, but he will say it was a team effort.